All right, YouTube, you can see more of my messy desk, darn it. All right, I'm cleaning that up. Yes, all right. Okay. Lisa, can I send you? Yes, please, guys. Please send cards. We've only gotten one. I went to the post office box yesterday and I was like, no. All right, let me start up Instagram and then we are good to go because I have a lot of news, babes. I got a lot of good news. It's been a week. All right, Instagram, where are you on my phone? Where are you? I got too many apps on my phone. Instagram. There we go. Instagram's much easier to set up. Hello, YouTube. All right. Okay. Instagram is almost ready. Come on, Instagram. No, I don't want to put up a butterfly picture. For goodness sake, what is wrong with Instagram here? Oh, there we go. Okay, Barbara, I'll give the address for sure. All right. Yeah, baby, there we go. Okay. Okay. We are ready. We are ready. Okay. Hello, my friends. Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, October 23rd. Wow, time is flying by. We are in the middle of hopefully our last major fire event here in California. The wind is blowing like a beast. I took a walk for an hour and I'm all congested now from it. So you have to bear with me as I sniffle. What is wrong with my glasses here? So my name is Jill Osborne. I am the National IC support group leader. I do live support group meetings usually every week here on Facebook and YouTube and now Instagram. That's where we are simulcasting right now. My purpose in doing these meetings is to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, and so informed that no one can mess with you, demean you, insult you, tell you that there's no hope, because there is always hope. One of the most important things that happened to me in my journey with IC is I had a doctor at an emergency room tell me, this is your life. Hi, Instagram. This is your life. You will always live with pain. Get used to it. And I went, what? Hold on one sec. Just hold the horses. Hold your horses. I have 3 college degrees. I have an award from the White House. I will prove you wrong, you son of a bitch. How dare you say this to me? I will not be a burden on my family. And honestly, that's exactly what I said to him. That's exactly what I said. You know, the gift of getting a little bit older is, you know, it's okay to be in your face. Hi, Caroline. And I was in his face. He was rude. He was arrogant. And he was a prick. That was the moment I set out to determine him wrong. And I came home and I started to study. I read everything I could about IC. I talked to everybody that I could. Oh, wait, look at this. Amy on Instagram. Oh, my God, you had that said to you, too. Exactly. Exactly. I was motivated for the first time. I was no longer going to be sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. Listen, if nobody's going to do it, if not you, who? We have to do it. We have to take our fight. We have to learn. Nobody can tell you when you need to pee. You're the one who knows when you need to pee. Nobody can have those important discussions with those doctors. You're the one who has to have those important discussions with your doctors. And that's what my goal is with you. I need to motivate you to get much more involved. Because passive patients do not do well. Active patients do well. The more motivated you are, the more involved you are, the more determined you are, the more angry you are. For God's sake, be angry, but don't be angry at yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. It is not your fault. It is not your fault in any way, shape, or form. But now we're going to try to fix it. Here, Instagram, I'm going to try to move you. I'm going to try to move you in front of my other things so my eyes aren't going all over the place. All right. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Dee says, I was diagnosed with IC 4 years later, diagnosed with MS, and a year ago diagnosed with Addison's disease. I've had doctors treat me like a druggie. It's BS. Yeah, it is. Hi, David. It is. So this is the blessing. This is the blessing. Hi, Donna. Of what we get to do now today. Is we get to motivate each other. We get to encourage each other. We get to support each other like you have never been supported anywhere else. Because the worst thing that can happen to an IC patient is for you to be at home alone with the window shut in your bedroom. Stop it. Don't do that anymore. Open up the doors. Get on the computer. Start reading. I dare you. I double dog dare you to read an article a day. The IC Network is the largest free archive of IC information in the world. I double dog dare you. I double dog dare you to read one article about IC a day. It'll take you 5 minutes to read an article. We got to get your knowledge up here. So listen, we already have some really, really good questions coming in. And let me I have to give you the update from the MAP research. From the National Institutes of Health meeting we did this week. It was great. It was probably the best meeting ever. It was hard. I had to get up at 4 a.m. Let me tell you, I have learned my brain does not work well at 4 a.m. But it was excellent. So hold on one sec. Somebody's. So for those of you who want the address, let me just put it in now. I'm just going to. This is for cards for my dad. If you could please send a card, that's great. I want you to remember it. He's turning 100 in 2 weeks. And he's the last survivor in his family. Both of my parents are. And all of his siblings are gone. And we don't have a lot of people to celebrate with. My brother doesn't help. My sister's been quite ill. And so I just put the address in on Facebook, and I will put it here on YouTube. So it's Jack, care of Jill Osborne. Yes, we are Jack and Jill. And it's 122 Calistoga Road. 3. Okay, so y'all have the address. Now, there's one other very urgent question I want to get to before I tell you about the meeting. So hold on a sec. Well, Helen wants to know how to relieve pelvic floor spasms. Well, number one, using a glass wand and getting in there and working on those muscles yourself. So hopefully you've had pelvic floor physical therapy and you know what to do. If you don't, then you need to ask your physical therapist to teach you how to do it. And so as long as you have a glass wand, you can do it at home and you can just manually kind of massage these muscles along. That's a good thing to do. Or you can use a skeletal muscle relaxant. That's going to be baclofen flexeril. Hi, Kayleen. Bev said, okay, hold on. This is it. Oh, Bev, girl. So Bev had a total bowel obstruction. She had to have surgery to try to repair that. Now your bladder is blocked. What? Is it blocked with scar tissue? I go to the urologist on Monday while you're in the ER. They asked me if I'd ever been diagnosed with IC. They sent me home with a catheter. Do you have any ideas for me? Yeah, Bev, just hang tight, girl. You gotta learn about some stuff, okay? I mean, your age is gonna matter, your skin health is gonna matter, diet's gonna matter, your subtype's gonna matter. But I will get to that if you can just hang tight, we will try to get there. Hi, Angel. Thank you, Ashley. Terry says, physical therapy is really helping. I've not asked you about the wand yet. Good. Okay. Got to do it. The wand this is the wand that I personally use. Easy Magic. Easy Magic. You can get it from Desert Harvest Aloe. Go to desertharvest.com and you can buy it there. We have a different wand. We're getting a wand that vibrates in the IC Network shop, but you can get this one from Desert Harvest, and this is what it looks like. I use mine. I've been using it 3 days in a row. I'm so proud of myself. Glass wand, and you use this internally. And for those of you wondering how, let me just do a quick demo right now. Oops, I dropped my bell. Here we go. All right. So let's look at this for a moment. So here is, whoops, no, I need my microphone. So here is your pelvis, right? So we got the pubic bone right here, the pubic symphysis in the front. On the back, we have our sacrum, we have our vertebrae, and of course, we have the all-important, often hidden source of all things related to IC, tailbone. I want you to take a look at everything that attaches to the tailbone. Do you see this? The tailbone plays a role in how we balance and how we walk. It moves. And the tailbone is supposed to be centered. If it is not centered, so it's supposed to be kind of curved under like this, because it curves between your legs. But if it's crooked, if it's straight and sticks out, you're going to have issues. So, but you can see here that muscles, specifically your pelvic floor muscles, do come up and they attach to your to your tailbone. We look at it from underneath. Whoops. Need my perineum. Come here, perineum. All right. My broken perineum. Okay, we look at it from underneath. This is a female model. I'm sorry, gents, I do not have a male model. Actually, I couldn't find one. I would love to find one to do demos for men too. So underneath, we have 3 different layers of muscles. We have a shallow layer of muscles called the levators, and we've got some mid-level muscles, and then we've got some deep muscles. So we're going to now take the levator, and if you look closely at the levator, it's got 3 holes. It's got it for women. It's got a hole for the urethra, a hole for the vagina, and a hole for the rectum. And this is what makes the pelvic floor the most interesting and unique of all the skeletal muscles in the human body, is because they have direct influence over major bodily functions, how you pee, how you have bowel movements, and how you have sex. Because if your muscles are tight, they squeeze the holes. Thus, it's hard to urinate. It's hard to have a bowel movement, and it's certainly hard to have sex. Pretty hard to have sex if your muscles are very, very tight. And some of you have always had very, very tight muscles. Sex has always been painful for you. We call that vaginismus, and that could relate to trauma that happens in childhood. That can relate to what we call a bony structure abnormality, maybe scoliosis, something at all like that. But there's hope for that because muscles respond beautifully to physical therapy, and I will come back to that when I talk about the MAT meeting. So now we have a chance to look at the layer of deeper muscles because we have taken the shallow ones off. And you can see I can stick my finger in there, right? Which, of course, is what the doctor does when they do a pelvic or they do a rectal exam. They're reaching up into the pelvic cavity to touch these muscles directly. So now you can see from my finger, I can get pretty deep. And the thing that you have to remember about the pelvic floor is that you're not going to reach these from the outside because they're behind bone. They're behind bone. And so when they work on the pelvic cavity and the pelvic floor muscles, what they're going to do is they're going to follow the length of the muscle. See how my finger's going? See that? This is exactly what I do. This is exactly what I did yesterday, right? So a wand is cool because it gives you a little bit more force and it gives you a little bit more reach. So hopefully you can see now that I see how easy it is. The wand goes in here. And so the wand really gives you a lot more access. See that? So I have been trying for years. I get this. Let's look at this for a second. I want you to look from the bottom again. So you know how in each butt cheek there's a bone? We call it the sit bone. See this? So here is your sit bone. These are your sit bones. So lift it up. Okay. Hip bone. We're going down this side. This is where your femur comes in, right? These are the bones that you sit on. These are the bones that you sit on. And a lot of us have tension right around the sit bone area. And I've always had tension around the left side of my sit bone. So I was really trying to figure that out because sometimes it flutters, it flickers. And anyway, I actually finally found the trigger point. After like 2 years of trying, I actually found a little tiny trigger point right on the inside of that sit bone using my wand. So anyway, when you're having a pelvic floor spasm, this is what you need to do. As Donna says here on YouTube, she said, my physical therapist said you have to be careful that you do not hurt yourself. Exactly, you do. So I found the trigger point, and it was a deep trigger point, and I only worked on it for about 30 seconds. Like I was really careful. And then I went back to work on it, and I could feel pain kind of radiating. And I was like, no, I'm going to back off. No. I know where it is now. Now I know where to work on it. Michelle says, what are the alternatives to coffee? Herbal coffee. Dandy Blend is fantastic. It is. Hold on. Oh. Right here. Dandy Blend herbal coffee is the bomb. This is incredible. No caffeine, no acid, completely bladder and bowel friendly, and you'll get everything you need with respect to coffee. You'll get that warm cup of lusciousness in the morning. It will help you have a bowel movement in the morning. It is just, I drink it all day in the summer. I make frappuccinos with it. You can have cup after cup of it as lattes, however you want to do it. In the winter months, it's just great. Dandy Blend. You can get that in the IC Network store. Okay. All right. So. Let us talk about this very, 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 very important meeting that happened this week. Susan says, can you use Dandy during the elimination diet? Yes, you can. You shouldn't have any problems with it at all. So the U.S. National Institutes of Health is a part of our government that does the medical research. And they are critically important to how diseases and conditions are treated here in the United States. There's a lot happening. There's this whole other world that you don't see of researchers and you name it. They're all in there, and they're fascinated and absorbed by the science and the beauty of how the human body works. And they have spent decades trying to understand, all sorts of different things about the human body and how we respond to injury and trauma and diseases, etc. It's just incredible. They have played the preeminent role in IC since the 1980s, probably earlier. It was in the 1980s that they convened the first committee and developed their first diagnostic criteria for IC. They were the first to hold worldwide meetings, inviting IC researchers from around the world to come to the United States, to various cities in the United States. We've had meetings in Washington. We've had meetings in Minnesota. We've had meetings in Orlando. They've been all over the place. And They represent the best of collaboration. They represent the best of a group of people who care about you incredibly. You know, so many people, so many patients feel like nobody cares. Well, I was just in a meeting with 150 of the best people in the world who absolutely care. They want to try to make things better for you. And so this was the first meeting that we'd had, and I missed the last one. So this first meeting I've been to in about 10 years. That's a big undertaking. It costs a lot of money to do these big meetings. And so the good side about the U.S. National Institutes of Health is that they created a foundation for IC research. They've funded IC research. They've funded big research teams like the multidisciplinary approach to the study of pelvic pain. They are what is keeping the IC research movement alive and well. And they attract the best of the best, but they also nurture new people, and they bring in patients because they want to know what your voice is too. The downside of government is that it's slow and it's paced and it's meticulous, and they don't respond quickly. You know, they are very thoughtful, conservative, and science-based, and et cetera, et cetera. So how do I want to say this? IC is changing rapidly. We have all known that IC has changed rapidly. We moved away from the bladder to look at muscles in 2011 or 2008. We, the IC patient community, we already knew that IBS could be involved. We already knew the vulvodynia could be involved. We already knew the whole skin sensitivity, smell sensitivity thing. And so they've had to, we are truly the leaders. Like, we're the nose of the horse. You and I, we are the nose of the horse. And it takes them time to believe us. It takes them time to understand us. It takes them time to, how do I want to say this? You can't do research on a disease until you know a patient. You got to know a patient. John, there will be again soon, like this week. Okay, so anyway, this was a fantastic meeting. And it was a fantastic, number one, they all acknowledged that up until this point, they weren't treating IC correctly, because they now completely accept what we have been talking about for 5 effing years, that there are subtypes. They call them phenotypes. This entire meeting was about precision medicine, that we are long past the point of giving everybody Elmeron. It does not work for everybody. A one treatment fits all approach does not work. Now it's about precision medicine. It's about understanding your unique case so that we can precisely give you the treatment appropriate for you, not for the company, for you. So y'all know we started talking about subtyping, phenotyping years ago with the Chris Payne system, which is the system I use. Hunner's lesions, bladder wall driven, pelvic floor driven, pudendal neuralgia, central sensitization, chronic overlapping pain conditions, right? Those are the clear groups, in my opinion. They basically do 4 of those 5. They leave out pudendal neuralgia. So they now accept and understand and admit that you cannot put apples, oranges, and bananas in the same research study and expect the study to be successful. It will not be successful. The Hunner's lesion patients are a distinct group. Estrogen atrophy bladder wall patients are a distinct group. Pelvic floor patients, 84% of IC patients have pelvic floor tension, according to the latest research study. Does that sound like a bladder disease when 84% of you have tight muscles? And the group that they're the most intrigued by are the patients who have what they call widespread pain that we call central sensitization. So we've got Hunner's lesions, bladder wall specific. Then we've got some updated bladder wall other issues like chemocystitis and estrogen atrophy. We've got pelvic floor driven, and we've got widespread pain. This is an incredible breakthrough. So the entire meeting really was about, okay, what do we study next? And how do we study it? And it leaves you have a choice. You can either, so let's just say, so what I pitched them, this is what I pitched them. I said, I think your next study needs to be on PEA. Now there's a lot of different forms of PEA. Palmitoyl-ethanolamide. Palmitoyl-ethanolamide has dozens of research studies showing that it reduces pain in lots of pain conditions, including IC. 87% of IC patients who use PEA reported a significant reduction in their pain. And so what I said is, listen, patients have nothing. The only FDA-approved oral medication for IC, Elmeron, is now linked to blindness. So that's pretty much off the table for most patients. Bladder, if you're not covered by insurance, you do not have access to perhaps bladder installations, which of course only makes sense for a certain group of patients. So what do the patients have? We have generics, if they're covered, and we have supplements right now. That's what we've got. And so I said, listen, let's be real. We have something with a preliminary IC study showing an 87% success rate. Why don't you validate that? Let's validate a quick, easy study. It is affordable. It is reachable. There were no side effects. Give it a shot. Why not? But then the conundrum is, okay, what subtype is going to respond the best to palmitoyl-ethanolamide? What subtype is going to respond the best to something that will calm nerve down? Well, we're not sure. So they can either guess and say, okay, we're gonna test this first on patients who have multiple pain conditions. So the IC, IBS, vulvodynia, etc. So let's do a study of that group. Let's give them PEA for 3 months, 6 months. Let's see what happens. And then that study will be able to specifically say, okay, PEA is helpful at calming nerves down for that. So they can do the subtyping first, or the phenotyping first, or what they could do, but this is much more rigorous, is they can let y'all in the study, they can let everybody in the study, every phenotype in the study. But then when the study is completed 3 months later, 6 months later, then they have to look at the data they've got to add with respect to the subtypes. And they might be able to say, okay, Hunner's lesions, yeah, they actually, because nerves are irritated and Hunner's lesions might respond well to this. Physical therapy patient, maybe, maybe not. Central sensitization. So that's really, it was really the brainstorming. We had a lot of breakout groups, and I really loved the breakout groups because you got to really see the passion and the discussion and the compromise. It's like, okay, we can do it this way, or we can do it this way, or we can do it this way. And it was an honor. An honor. This was also the first meeting where they allowed patients to speak. They brought in 3 random patients who told their stories. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit because the patients that they brought in were they were all women in their 60s, and 2 out of the 3 very clearly were estrogen atrophy patients. I've been saying. And I said that to them. I said, listen, props to these women for coming and sharing their story, but these are not the women I'm working with every day. I'm working with 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, teenagers. And so we've got to understand the diversity of this patient population. We've got to try to reach those patients when they're young. And that helped me understand, like, one of the flaws of the National Institutes of Health Research Program is that you guys don't get access to that. The patients who have the opportunity to participate in an NIH study generally are patients who are really well covered by insurance, who happen to live in a major city where there's a major university. But if you're out in Podunk County and you're homebound and you can't get there, you wouldn't have the opportunity. Plus, you assume that they've gone from a local doctor to a regional doctor and then to a national doctor. And so they're going to be more advanced anyway. Anyway, it's just one of the things that kind of going through my brain here. It's fascinating. So this is a great time for us. Everybody is eating humble pie, appropriately so. They clearly admitted that every single IC study they did, with the exception of one, failed. Because you can't put apples, oranges, and bananas in the same study. So the Elavil study, the Elmeron study, the hydroxyzine study, they failed. There was one study in the last 25 years that succeeded. You know what it was? The physical therapy study. The physical therapy study that they did, that was released either in 2008 or 2011. It was a big multi-center study. That study changed the face of how we perceive IC, because that study outperformed all of these other studies and proved that if you work with muscles, symptoms resolve for many of us. And that was the moment that everybody went, uh-oh, maybe we need to stop thinking about this as an incurable bladder disease. And I'd focus on the fact that for many patients, there's a muscle problem. And now that we know that 84% of IC patients have a muscle problem, many more of you need to be in physical therapy. Especially those of you who were diagnosed 20 or 30 years ago. You have been on bladder therapies all this time and you're still flaring. Why are you flaring? You're flaring because we haven't fixed the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is poor blood supply, because your muscles are so freaking tight. If your bladder is supposed to get 24 units of blood a day and it's only getting 10 units of blood a day, will it be healthy? No. We call this ischemia. It is oxygen deprivation. It is nutritional deprivation. Here, hold on a sec. Jeannie asking to be in the honey, I don't know what that means. Oh, you want to go live with me? Jeannie, I want to hold back on that a little. If you don't mind, let me just get through this first. We normally don't do that. But honey, it's not that I'm willing to try. I want to try, but I want to try to get through this first, okay? Now I know how John Edward does it on TikTok, because you got to go live. Here, hold on. Okay, no, she says no. Okay. So anyway, this is a great time for us. This is a great time for us. I got to plant some really big seeds. I got to advocate for you. There was no other, the ICA was not there. So I was stunned. We were all stunned. I got an email as it started saying, where's the ICA? I had no idea. Nobody from the ICA was involved that I could see. Maybe they were watching in the background, but they weren't. We didn't see them. What else? So the key term here is precision medicine. That is our future. This is highly targeted treatments based upon your unique case. And I'm going to send the NIH staffer who's managing this, who's leading this effort. I'm gonna put together a proposal yet again about trying to get them to look at PEA. I just think that has the potential to help the most people quickly. And that was one of the things I said. You know, back when I was doing the congressionally directed medical research program for about 10 years, I was the patient representative on the IC panel and the antibiotic resistance panel. And my job was to ground the scientists. It's like, you love the science, guys. I know you love the science, and we could spend 25 years studying how the bladder works. That's not going to help the patient. We have to focus on the patient. We need something that we can help a patient within a couple of years. So that's my job. So anyway, really, really exciting news. Then on Tuesday evening, I had the COVID booster, and it kicked my butt for 3 days. I'm glad I did it, but 101 fever for 24 hours, and then it was the COVID booster was a little bit rough. All right. So does anybody have any questions on what I just said here? Donna says, were all the patients Caucasian? Yes, they were, and that was brought up. And specifically, a big focus of that discussion was, how can we bring diversity into the patient, into the research group more effectively. And they had somebody from Harvard speaking who was incredible. And I asked a lot of questions. And we have to stop doing studies just of older white women. It's just unreasonable. And so they have some very good, excellent strategies on how to break that. They did not ask me. I didn't know they were going to do that. So I was not involved with selecting the women who were there. I would have had a man there. I would have had a younger patient there. And I certainly, Donna, you would have been perfect. You would have been perfect there. Overlapping conditions could be high blood pressure or cholesterol. I don't know. This should be looked at and handled throughout specific. I may not make. That's okay, hon. Angel says, what brand name estrogen to use? You don't need a brand name. Estradiol, Estradiol. All right. Thank you, Divine. Okay, so of course, Facebook is being all weird. I need to pop out my discussion here so that I can actually scroll backwards and look at what you wrote. Our next magazine, IC Optimist magazine, our fall magazine, is at the typesetter right now. Hopefully it'll be finished next week. Oh man, it doesn't want me to do it. There. Oh, come on, Facebook. Okay, there you go. Cheryl says, can there be two types, pelvic floor tightness and widespread pain? Absolutely, because whenever you're in pain, your muscles are going to get tight as a response to the pain. That's called the guarding reflex, right? I call it the chicken versus the egg dilemma. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And for us, it's which comes first, the bladder or the pelvic floor. They're both involved. They cannot not both be involved. Your job is try to figure out what's primary and what's secondary. If, for example, your symptoms began after chemotherapy and your bladder's screaming from the chemicals of the chemo, your muscles are going to get tight to protect you from the pain. That's called the guarding reflex. You know, your body's just going to go, don't move, don't move, don't move, ow, don't move. Our therapeutic priority for the chemotherapy patient is to stop the irritant. Hopefully you get through the chemo. And then calm and soothe the bladder. We're going to do bladder-specific therapies, hoping that as the bladder calms down with pain, the muscles will relax. But that's only half of the puzzle. The far more big group of patients are the patients whose symptoms began after a muscle trauma. You fell and broke your tailbone, or you were raped, or you were a gymnast, or a football player, or a paratrooper, or you sat for a long period of time. Of course, you have no idea you have a muscle injury. You have no idea you have a muscle injury. Your first symptom is frequency, urgency. You call your doctor. Hey, doc, I have an infection. Doctor goes, okay, here's some antibiotics. They don't work. You go back to the doctor. The doctor goes, okay, let's do some long-term antibiotics. So you do antibiotics for 6 months, a year. They don't work. You're still flaring. You go back to the doctor. The doctor goes, okay, maybe we need to do some prostate meds, some overactive bladder meds. You do that. You're still flaring. You go back to the doctor, and eventually you get the, oh, I hate to break it to you. You got this incurable bladder disease called interstitial cystitis. I'm so sorry. Here's some Elmeron. Here's the diet. I'll see you in 6 months. And you legitimately want to get better. And you got a diet. You got a name. Wait, interstitial cystitis? But you're so happy to have a name. You finally have a name. You're validated. You are validated. And you go home and you read the materials they gave you and you follow the diet and you take the Elmeron and you take the Elavil and you take the hydroxyzine for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You're still flaring. Why? Why? Because none of those fix the problem. Because the problem is tight pelvic floor muscles restricting blood supply, causing ischemia. A therapeutic priority for the muscle injury patient is to restore blood supply. How do we do that? We do that by touching muscles. We got to get in here. You know, I mean, listen, this is a small confined area here from hip bone to hip bone down to tailbone. There's a hell of a lot of stuff happening in the pelvis. You got skeletal muscles to help you open and close your legs and walk and balance. You've got your organs. You've got your urinary tract. You've got your reproductive tract. You've got your bowel. You've got massive blood vessels, and you've got nerves. Nothing operates in isolation. Everything influences each other massively. And the challenge here with these muscles, with these pelvic floor muscles, especially, oh, you know, I should show you. Let me show you a picture here real quick. Hold on. Where's my book? Is that nerves and blood vessels weave in and out of these muscles. And so if these muscles are jacked up, then your nerves and your blood vessels are going to be jacked up. And then your bladder is eventually going to get sensitive because, hello, it doesn't have good blood supply. I want to see if I can, yeah. Here we go. I want you, now I have to hold these pictures up separately. So now I know YouTube, you can see this. So these are the nerves right here going directly through the muscle fibers. You see that? Here. You see that? So if this muscle is screwed up, do you see how it's going to lock down on these nerves? Especially if you look at it right here. Look, you can really see how this nerve runs right through important areas. And for Instagram, there you go. You see that? You look at that right here. You can see the nerves going right through. So here you've got tight muscles squeezing down on blood vessels, squeezing down on nerves that are supposed to support your bladder. And they don't. And your bladder now is basically being starved. Is your bladder wall going to be healthy? No. Are you going to be food sensitive? Yes. But bladder therapies are not going to fix you. What's going to fix you is pelvic floor physical therapy. And again, the one study out of every study, $100 million funded in IC research. The only study that was successful was a pelvic floor physical therapy study. Mandy says, I was 26 when I was diagnosed. I was a cheerleader, horse baler rider, multiple UTI since the age of 3, bucked off a horse, landed on my tailbone. I had the perfect storm for that pain. You did. You did. And the thing is so many of you, when you talk to me, you say, I have a history of UTIs. I've had UTIs my whole life. Well, and the question I always ask is, all right, did you test positive for infection? And most of you go, usually, right? Most of you do that. And that's because the bladder only knows one language: frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. The only way that the bladder can tell you that it's hurt is with all the symptoms that you associate with infection. So all those UTIs you thought you were having as a kid were flares. They were flares. And Mandy, for you, honestly, I mean, I'm going to assume, I mean, since you grew up with horses, I also grew up with horses, and I still have to wonder. And I had a couple of spectacular falls off of our horse. What role that played, because that was, now that I think about it, so my symptoms started in 7th grade. I had frequency urgency. I had broken my tailbone, and I was horseback riding. I was taking lessons. Think about, well, it doesn't matter if you're sitting on a horse or sitting on a bicycle seat or a motorcycle. You got nothing there protecting you. You got nothing there protecting you. Everything is going to push directly up into those muscles and nerves and blood vessels. You're literally sitting directly on muscles, nerves, and blood vessels. Now, normally your sit bone protect you. The sit bones would hit the saddle first. Right? On a horse. I mean, whether it's Western or English, you would expect that the sit bone would hit the saddle first so that you weren't bouncing up and down directly on muscles and nerves. But bicycle seats are deadly for this area, because bicycle seats are going to push directly up. You don't, when you're on a racing bicycle seat, you're really not even on your sit bones. The nose of that bicycle seat is pushing directly right there. This is why we call it bike rider syndrome. That's usually a pudendal nerve injury. So here, hold on. We got some good stuff going. You got some good questions here. So let me scroll back here real quick. Terry says, I have to take a week off from physical therapy due to my work schedule. It sounds like that will help. Yeah, please do. Yeah. And you guys understand, listen, 2 visits to the, I was working with one patient this week. She'd only been to the physical therapist 2 times since she gave up. And I said, well, how long have you had pain with sex? She goes, my whole life. And I said, 2 physical therapy visits are not going to fix that. You got a fundamental problem with tension that's happened for years, and you're going to have to work on this for a significant amount of time to try to reteach these muscles how to be calm and healthy. Amber says, endometriosis IC, 3 surgeries later, pain won't stop, almost constant. You know, endometriosis is called the evil twin. The challenge with endometriosis, guys, is that endometrial tissue is stiff and rigid, and it will wrap around everything. So, I mean, here again, you've got all these precious organs, all these precious structures and organs in the pelvis. And now you've got endometriosis weaving around them and locking down tight. You can get endometriosis wrapped around your bowel. You can get endometriosis wrapped around your urethra. You can get endometriosis all the way up by your lungs. It's just so sad what happens with endometriosis. So in some cases, endometriosis causes a physical injury, physical trauma. And in other cases, you have to understand that every for patients with endometriosis, you're in a lot of pain. And because you're in a lot of pain, your muscles are going to lock down tight to protect you from that pain. We have to look at the concept of nerve injury too. So please understand that the endometriosis is literally a man-made condition. Endometriosis has now been linked to man-made toxins like dioxin. And dioxin is the single most toxic substance ever made by man. It's a byproduct of burning plastic. And as you burn the plastic, it goes up the smokestack and it settles in the ranch land. So then the cows eat the dioxin tainted grass. That dioxin comes right back into the body of the cow. Then it concentrates in the milk and the meat, and then you drink the milk and you eat the meat, and now you are now a victim of dioxin toxicity. So I can talk about that, but I just want to strongly recommend the Endometriosis Association. They are an incredible nonprofit, and they're the ones who taught me about it. And so please, if you can, go over, just Google Endometriosis Association and go through their stuff. They're fabulous. Mandy says, my latest cysto shows major healing. Yeah, baby, following the diet, pelvic floor therapy, and bladder rest. I'm so glad. Of what you're doing, everything you're doing is perfect. Because you're doing physical therapy to restore blood supply, you're following the diet so you're not injuring your bladder, and you're using a supplement that has the potential of coating your bladder. And so if you were IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven, estrogen atrophy, you're perfect. If you are pelvic floor injury, you're still perfect. Those are 3 good things. And hopefully, as things really calm down, you won't need to use the supplements as much. The most important thing is the physical therapy. Cheryl says, can you be pelvic floor type? Yes. Terry says, amazing. All the doctors can't figure me out. None of them suggested physical therapy. All things I've tried not help. Your suggestion in physical therapy prompted me to ask. Good, honey, I'm good. Retha says, I'm 55, diagnosed at 29, but I've had problems since I was 5 years old. Okay, so Retha, again, we have subtypes. So we don't think of IC as an incurable bladder disease anymore. We do not think of IC as an incurable bladder disease. It is a pelvic pain syndrome. That is what our new guidelines say. In Europe, they are no longer going to be using the name interstitial cystitis at all, nor will they be using the name chronic prostatitis. It is a pelvic pain syndrome, often with a neuromuscular origin. So for somebody whose symptoms begin at that young age, we're really going to look at a couple of different things. We're going to look at injury. Did you fall? We're going to look at any inherited conditions. There was a very interesting paper earlier this year written by a doctor who was looking at this. And basically, he just said, for anybody under the age of 25 who develop symptoms, we're going to look at injury first. Whether you're 25, 20, 15, or 5. We want to look at trauma. There can be birth defects. There can be some inherited sensitivity issues. We also want to make sure that there's not a history of abuse. So I did a really fun coaching for about 2 hours the other night. And, you guys are like pulling needles out of haystacks, right? And so this was a woman who, she was like my sister. So many of you are exactly like me. And so that's great. I know I'm not alone. Who had been diagnosed with IC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I go through the subtypes. And she's like, not really buying into any of them. I was like, okay, I have a little bit of this, and I have a little bit of that. And, but what she did have is she had skin sensitivity. No, she didn't. Well, let's see. She either had skin sensitivity or smell sensitivity. And whenever we look at that sensitivity, we are always, always, always focused now on the central nervous system. And so we talked about that, and I kind of went through, okay, some patients have IC and IBS and other pain conditions. She's like, kind of. She's not biting. And then I talked about why does this happen? And we know, that's a big question, is why do some patients get multiple pain conditions? Because I'm in this group. And I said, well, for 80%, it's a history of a traumatic accident, like breaking something. 14 days of pain will change your brain and put you into that sensitivity pathway. But then for the other 20%, it's a history of abuse or bullying. And then she shared her very, very tragic story of living with an unpredictable alcoholic father. And what do we know now about chronic overlapping conditions and central sensitivity? Is it's the equivalent of a central nervous system injury. It's not mental illness. Nobody's saying this is mental illness in any way, shape, or form. It's not mental illness, Instagram. It's not. Divine, I'll take that question in a sec. It is instead central nervous system injury. And we just had this wonderful discussion. And we started talking about anxiety and all that sort of stuff. And she had lived with anxiety and chronic fight or flight her entire life, just like I had. And it's wonderful to be able to say to you, it's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. No shame, no blame. You got hurt. You got hurt by an alcoholic father who came home and beat your mom. And you saw it happening, right? Divine says, what supplement can I buy to coat my bladder? It's going to be a chondroitin-based supplement. You've got two options. You can go aloe or you can go chondroitin. Aloe is soothing. So aloe has a soothing effect. If you have a sunburn and you put aloe on it, it is soothing. It is undeniably soothing. But it's not constructive because the bladder does not physically have aloe molecules in the bladder wall. What is constructive to the bladder wall is chondroitin. Chondroitin plays an important role in the superficial integrity of the bladder wall. So if you like aloe, that's fine. It's going to help with symptoms. The problem is so many patients chase the symptoms and you don't get to the fundamental problem. We want to focus on causation. We want to focus on trying to heal whatever's wrong. So aloe might get you through some tough nights, but it's the chondroitin that has the potential of being a more effective coating, for lack of a better term. So that's going to be Divine, Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Cysto Protect, or Cysto Mend. Those are the top 4 chondroitin supplements. And in order, Bladder Builder is number 1, Bladder Rest is number 2, Cysto Mend and Cysto Protect are side by side. We did just get, after 4 months, Cysto Protect is in. We got it. We got it on Friday afternoon. So for those of you who you just love your Cysto Protect, it is now back in stock. We had a nationwide shortage, so you can come on over to the IC Network and get that. Donna goes, here we go again. Research comes out, and we as patients have to educate our doctors. At this point, we hope our doctors believe us. Do we now refer them to the NIH website? There is going to be a report. There will be a report created by the National Institutes of Health on the meeting. And when that report is available, you can then give that to your doctor. And is this new information going to be taught in medical school? We'll see. You're welcome, Divine. So you guys, we're simulcasting on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram right now. Divine says, my doctor literally just told me she had no more ways to help me in her bag of tricks. I don't know what to do. Divine. And how can you get the magazine? You can get it. You become a member of the IC Network. So come on over to icnetwork.org. So let's talk about Divine for a moment here. My doctor just told me she had no more ways to help me in her bag of tricks. I don't know what to do. You are classic, Divine. You are classic. We have brand new guidelines for IC that just came out a couple months ago. And the core principle of the guidelines is if you're not responding to therapy, take a step back, revisit the diagnosis. If you're not responding to bladder therapies, then maybe it's not a bladder problem. Maybe it's something else triggering your bladder. And so, Divine, basically, that's exactly where you are, my dear. That is exactly where you are. She's tried her tricks, which are going to be Elmeron, Elavil, hydroxyzine, and bladder instills, and maybe neuromodulation, and maybe Botox. But you're not responding. Why? Why? Because they missed you. There's something else going on. That's why. And that's what the AUA guidelines say. Stop what you're doing, take a step back, revisit the diagnosis. So this is when we have to look at your symptoms here. What could they have missed? So for example, this is my favorite miss, aside from the tailbone injury. The tailbone injury, classic myth. One of the early symptoms that we had no idea what it was. I had no idea what it was, for 25 years. I've been doing this 29 years. Some of you talk about heaviness, that you feel like you're carrying a bowling ball around in your pelvis. You wake up in the morning, you're okay. As the day goes on, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, until by the end of the day, you are miserable and you are uncomfortable and you can barely walk. And you feel like you got a giant bowling ball around in your pelvis, right? What the hell is that? Well, we now know what that is. That's called pelvic congestion syndrome. It's pelvic congestion syndrome. It means you have varicose veins, specifically one specific, I don't remember if it's a vein or an artery actually, but there's one large vessel in one specific location in your pelvis that is known for swelling. It stretches out and you start collecting this big wad of blood right there. And that's the heaviness. The great news, and of course, bladder therapies are not going to fix that. The great news is we know how to fix that. And again, this week, I was working with a patient who had that symptom. An interventional radiologist is who you see, not a typical radiologist, an interventional radiologist. They're the ones who can die. No, I got to take that back. She had been in the emergency room. Her pain was so severe, they did an MRI. And they saw it. They went, you have pelvic congestion syndrome. But nobody explained it to her and nobody suggested treating it. That's crazy. Like they saw it. It's just already diagnosed. Okay. And her question was, who do I go to? An interventional radiologist. Embrace your strength. Embrace your strength. We got to be fighters now. I'm done being passive. I'm done taking crap from anybody. I once had the ultimate crap. I was chairing a pain conference. I was the chairperson. I brought in the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. I brought in Dan Burkhoff. All these doctors around the country came and we did this massive pain conference, right? The day before, I go to the pharmacy to pick up my Vicodin. I go, nobody could ever accuse me of being a pain abuser, pain med abuser. Back then, I would get one prescription, 30 pills, like every 4 or 5 years. Because I know how to take it. Tiny, tiny amounts early, right? So I go there to get that. And this bastard goes, well, I guess we'll know if you're an addict if we see you in a week. Everybody gasped. And I was like looking at him going, what did you just say? especially since we were doing grand rounds at that hospital the next morning with Dan Burkhoff on pain, and I was speaking. So I drove home furious. I called the pharmacy manager and I told her what happened. He got transferred. he got a talking to. Not okay. So be bold, speak out. Janet says, I think IC and constipation go hand in hand. I go to pelvic floor physical therapy where she works on pressure type massage on my belly to loosen up the muscles and the scar tissue. Do others have this problem? Absolutely, Janet. Absolutely. Janet said, my IC started after hysterectomy, never had a single problem before. Girl, listen, hysterectomy is brutal to the pelvic floor. I had 10 months of levator antispasms, involuntary. It was just, they were just quivering. Felt like there was a hand up inside my vagina grabbing onto where my cervix used to be and trying to pull it out of my body. Very common for patients to have problems after hysterectomy. Very, very common. Divine here on Instagram said, I'm 53. I broke my back when I was 25. Yeah, where did you break your back, hon? L4, L5? Hi, Bridget. Jenna says, will one cause a flare? Not if you, it never flared me. Michelle says, thank you for the recommendation of Dandy Blend. It's not gluten-free. Is there another gluten-free option? I'm crazy about the flavor. It's not gluten-free? What? What's in it that has gluten? So it's got roasted barley, roasted rye, roasted chicory root, and roasted dandelion. And they're extracts. They're not, so chemically, basically what they've done is they've either, I don't know what chemical process they would have used, but they're not the fruit itself. It's an extract that's like they've boiled it massively. The important chemicals are in the steam. The steam goes up a tube, then there's a condenser, and then, yeah. So well, it doesn't say anything about it. Made in Poland. Wow, it's one of the best Polish products ever. So, hold on a sec. I personally like being gluten-free myself. I've been eating a lot of gluten this week, which is why I'm all puffy. Just out of curiosity, let's see what they. Dandy Blend, it does not contain wheat or fruit, nor is there a possibility of cross-contamination with any of the above allergens. Okay. Due to the kind of water extraction processing our ingredients go through, the gluten is removed. We only use roasted barley extracts and roasted rye extracts. Please find our third party. They have the testing results for gluten in which state not detected. Not detected. So you're good. You're good, hon. Bev says about spousal abuse for years being pushed backwards, kicking. Absolutely, honey. Absolutely. And I'm so sorry that this happened to you. I'm so incredibly sorry. We know, when we talk about chronic overlapping pain conditions and the central sensitization, what we have learned that patients who have chronic overlapping pain conditions have a central nervous system injury. You have a central nervous system injury. And that has made the nervous system more sensitive. And so what does that mean? It means it's easier to turn things on than it should be. It's easier to create pain than it should be. It means things which shouldn't hurt do hurt because that nerve has become uber sensitive. So when we think about the events that cause this, we know that it can be from a physical injury in childhood, that 14 days of pain can put the brain into this central sensitization. But we also know that 20 days of abuse and bullying can put this brain into central sensitization. And that's not just for kids, that's for adults. If you have a bully at work, if you've got a jungle fighter, somebody at work who takes credit for all your work and tries to minimize everything that you do to the point that they're threatening your job, believe me, you're going to be in fight or flight every time you go to work. I have a friend who struggles with that every day at work. So I hope that you've gotten out of that situation. I hope that you're safe. I hope that you know that this was never your fault. This was never your fault. It is an abuser who is taking it out on you for many, many different reasons. And I want you to find some peace and I want you to find some calm. That's what I've had to do. You know, it's easy to live in the past, but we don't want in the past. It passes over, it's done. He does not deserve a minute of your time. This is the moment we have right now. And we don't want to get pulled into revisiting those moments every single day. I know that they're triggered. As Donna says, what about PTSD patients? We can get triggered. Like a plane just flew over. And my immediate thought was, where's the fire? We all have PTSD for lots of different reasons. But hopefully we've got the skills to recognize that we got triggered, to do those deep breaths, to try to calm everything down, and then to refocus our brain mindfully on what can I do right now that will put me in a better place. Because I don't want to give this person another minute of my time. I hope that made sense. Susan says, can you use a PEA supplement during the elimination diet? Sure, I don't see why you wouldn't. Cheryl says, do I recommend Bladder Builder? I've taken it for 2 months, wondering how long to try. Can't take some of the others because of glucosamine. Thinking of trying Desert Harvest Aloe. Yeah, Bladder Builder is, in my opinion, the best supplement on the market. Why? Because it has the most methods of action. It has the most ways that it can help you. It's got the chondroitin for the bladder wall. It's got the quercetin for the antihistaminic effect. It's got beneficial probiotics for the gut. It's got essential amino acids. But most importantly, it has PEA in it for pain relief. And so it is the only chondroitin-based supplement that has the PEA in it. We do have aloe with PEA too, but aloe, again, you have to think about cause versus effect. You have to be laser focused on trying to fix the underlying problem. Otherwise, you're going to chase symptoms for years and you're never going to fundamentally get better. We want to fix the underlying problem so that you don't have those symptoms in the first place. So aloe is great. Aloe is great for getting you through a flare. It is great for keeping things on the down low, kind of calm side. But it's not going to fix the underlying abnormality of the bladder wall. If you've got Hunner's lesions, if you've got estrogen atrophy, chemocystitis, chondroitin has a greater potential of being constructive to the bladder wall. Judy says, love the new website. Thank you. Well, I'm working on a lot more. I'm working on a video series for newly diagnosed patients right now. And it has my brain spinning what I want to say to you. Shara says, I've done physical therapy for over the years, 4 different months over the past 2 decades. I end up back with flares every year. Should I keep going? So Sarah, yes. But you're not asking the important question here. So when you go to physical therapy, they are clearly finding a problem with your muscles, correct? Your muscles are tight. Now you have to ask why. Why is my muscle tight in this specific location? And that's an important way that you evaluate your progress with physical therapy anyway. Is when you go to the physical therapist, hopefully what the physical therapist is seeing is a steady, consistent restoration of normal muscle tone. Okay. You know, we're going from super tight to slowly being relaxed. And we want to stay relaxed. If you have a bad SI joint like I do, side is always going to get tight again because it's trying to keep my bones together. And until I get my SI joint fixed in some way, I'm always going to be prone to having tight muscles on my left side. And so so you're going to be asking your physical therapist, am I going back to tension? Am I always going back to tension? Why? We need them to look at your bones. Is it a bad hip? Well, one of you was, I was working with a patient a couple of weeks ago. She goes, yeah, man, I've had pain in my left hip for years. And it's like, okay, there's a clue. That's a big giant clue. Why does your hip? And a number of you, when you realize the connection and you actually went to somebody who specialized in, an orthopedic surgeon or a physiotherapist, you've had broken labrums, right? So we want to look at the hip. We want to look at the SI joint. We absolutely need to look at your tailbone. And we need to look at your knees. Do we have a knee problem? But last but not least, we have to look at your feet. How are you walking? How do you walk? Are you pigeon-toed? Are you duck-footed? Is your second toe longer than your first toe? When your foot hits the ground, listen, the way the human body is designed, the bigger the bone, the more weight it's meant to carry. So if you were walking normally, your big toe carries 70% of the weight burden when you walk. And your second toe carries the remaining 30%. Your other three toes carry nothing. They're just stabilizing. They don't carry weight because the big toe is supposed to be the biggest bone. But if you happen to have your second toe longer than your first toe, and I mean the big knuckle, then the second toe is now getting 70% of the weight. The big toe's carrying nothing. And then the other three toes are now carrying weight that they shouldn't be carrying. And that's what causes hammer toes, because now these toes are trying to grip more because they're now carrying weight, right? So if you've got hammer toes, that's because for some reason, your big toe is not carrying the weight it's supposed to be carrying. And all that is reflected back up. But if you have, what is that? If you have an ankle that rolls in, like I was driving yesterday and I saw this lady who was knock-kneed. She was knock-kneed. And so her knees, her legs weren't straight. Her legs were basically like this. So your legs are basically meant to be straight, and they go basically equal length right up into your pelvic cavity. In her case, she was knock-kneed, right? And so her outer thighs were really skewed into her pelvis. And I was just thinking, man, her pelvic floor has got to be messed up. I have a really good picture of this. This. Hold on a sec. There's just packages at the front door. But okay. No bending over. All right. Sorry about that. There's a big truck in front of our house. It's like, okay. Michelle says, currently in bed, recovering from your booster. Man, that booster the next day packed a punch. Okay, so I want you to ponder this diagram here for a moment. Here is a healthy ankle. You see how it goes straight up into the pelvic cavity. The shin is straight at a 90-degree angle. The femur goes out to the side, obviously where it connects with your hip bone. Now look at what happens if you have an ankle that's rolling in. If you have an ankle that's rolling in, immediately your shin is not straight, it's skewed out, right? And then look at what happens when it hits the femur. It exaggerates it more. So what does that mean? That means that the pelvic floor muscles on this side are tighter and stretched out as compared to this side. So how you walk. Now, I was working with one patient diagnosed with IC, had terrible pelvic floor muscles. Just no matter what they did, her muscles were not responding. And then Dr. Weiss's book comes out. We learn about the feet. Yeah, she had a really severe effect. She had a club foot, and she would never walk normally. And that was exactly why her muscles were so tight. And my heart really broke for her. Anybody ever watched that show, My Feet Are Killing Me, on TLC? That it's like my secret passion is the TLC medical shows. That is very insightful as to what happens when you have a bad foot and how that affects the rest of the body. Kathy says, if you find a great physical therapist who treats pelvic floor changes, that's everything. Exactly. All right. Now, Instagram, I'm really trying not to ignore you guys. All right. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, C. Wally. Hi, Bridget. Hi, I see interstitial endo. I like your name. Hi, Liz. Hi, Barbie. Hi, Ed Cox. Hi, Threes. There was one other thing that I was going to tell you guys about. Oh, I know what it was. Hold on. Oh, this is so cool. Wait, I got to find my notes. So this is also from the meeting. So what I didn't know. So we've talked about the chronic overlapping pain, the Chronic Pain Research Alliance, which is this fantastic group of researchers from all the patient groups, from all of the pain conditions, who got together about 10, 15 years ago and created this research team. And they were determined to try to understand what causes all these pain conditions. And they're the ones who had the laser focus on the central nervous system. They're the ones who made the breakthroughs in helping us understand the central nervous system injury, et cetera, et cetera. And it's led by the TMJ Association. They rock. Oh man, listen, I had lofty goals from the IC network, but the TMJ Association has changed the world. They have changed our future in so many ways. What I didn't know is that for the last 5 or 6 years, they have been collaborating with the National Institutes of Health and other research teams to create a new diagnostic tool to help doctors identify the pain. And oh my God, they did this incredible job. All right, now where are my notes? Are they on this computer? No, I was participating on, okay. Where are my notes? Hold on, I gotta find this. It's not that, not that. Let me go to my recent, see if I can find it. Untitled. Could that be it? Hold on. So, well, I will find it. So anyway, what we have now. Oh wait, it's got to be in my history files. Hold on, I got to find this for you. I got to find this for you. It's just so cool. Okay, so it would have been Monday. Is that it? Nope, that's not it. That's close, not it. I did it. I did this survey, and the first 5 questions were my questions on sensitivity. It was incredible. Do you have sensitive skin? Do you have a wicked sense of smell? Do you have sensitive hearing? And it was just so cool to see that. Was it on Tuesday? The problem is I'm always working on multiple computers. And so let me see if I can find it here. I will find it. Anyway, incredible survey that you can use to assess your pain. Doctors can use, and it's just the very, very first questions were the sensitivity. I was like, yeah. Michelle, so Michelle's currently in bed recovering from your booster. So when did you have your booster, hun? I mean, I don't regret having my booster at all. You're not going to feel good for a couple of days potentially. And it's weird. Like I had 101 fever for 24. It started up the next day, the next morning. So I had a significant fever for 24 hours. And then I had this weird headache whenever I bent over. So I had a headache for a couple of days. And I'm about 80% back, I'd say. Judy said, my 20-year-old granddaughter recently had laparoscopic surgery. Here, hold on. Found endometriosis. Her doctor told her she had very tight muscles and needs pelvic floor physical therapy after she heals. I told her over and over how important this is. I hope she listens. She's a college student at Gonzaga and Spokane. So, Judy, here's the great news for her. There are so many physical therapists in Washington that are certified in pelvic floor work because the institute that does all the certification around the world is called the Herman Wallace Institute, is based in Washington. And so I have no doubt she's going to find a great physical therapist. I would, if you can, explain it to her with the concept of ischemia. You need to remind her or teach her that nothing operates in isolation in the pelvis. They all influence each other. And the challenge here is all the blood vessels and the nerves go right through those muscles. Like they literally go through muscle groups. And so if that muscle group locks down tight, it's gonna squeeze a nerve. And that's what we causes pudendal neuralgia or sciatica. If she ever has pain shooting down her leg, pins and needles. I was working with a patient with a lot of pins and needles and poking. If she has areas of numbness, if she has painful arousal every now and then, it just happens out of the blue in the middle of class. That's a muscle pressing on a nerve. So that's one thing. I'm sorry, my dad is raising his voice towards my mom. She's deaf, so he has to do that. But the far more important thing that she's got to understand is the tight muscles restrict blood supply. And that's devastating. It's called ischemia. Ischemia, I-S-C-H-E-M-I-A. I was talking with a physical therapist on Friday about it, actually. And that's the devastating one because it restricts blood supply. Until we get those muscles good and healthy, she's always going to have pain with sex. Things are going to be much harder. She's going to struggle to pee. She's going to struggle to have a bowel movement. And she's going to have pain with intimacy. We've got to get those healthy. And my bet is that, she was an athlete. Was she a cheerleader, a gymnast, anything at all like that? That would explain it. A dancer, a ballet, whatever. And I'd be happy to talk to her. He says, I'm getting a Prolia shot on Tuesday. First one, I'm a bit nervous. Side effects, both hips, neck, and femur have bone loss. Thoughts? I don't have anything bad to say about Prolia with respect to your bladder. I don't have any bad stories to share. I mean, we've got to keep the bones healthy, hon. You got to keep those bones healthy. And if that's what your doctor is suggesting, you've got to review the pros and cons and see if you're comfortable with it. Carrie says, I'm planning on having a gastric sleeve procedure in a few months. What anesthesia drug should I ask them to avoid? I don't. So there are anesthesias that are stronger than others. So like when I had my D&C, they were able to use propofol. And propofol is like the perfect anesthetic for easy procedures because you go out quick and you come back out of it quick. And my biggest concern, back in 1993, when I was still convinced that I had cancer, I mean, I was completely convinced. I didn't believe IC at all. It's like, I have cancer. You missed it. You need to do an exploratory surgery to prove to me that I do not have cancer because I think I'm dying right now. Right? I mean, I felt like I was dying of cancer in the summer of 1993. And I said, I want you to look. And the doctor's like, really? And I went, yeah, I want an exploratory. I want to do a laparotomy. Please, so go in and look. I think you've missed it. I think I have cancer. My wonderful OBGYN was like, okay, I'll do it. And of course, they didn't find cancer. And we woke up and, and he's like, no, it's IC. And that I needed to hear that because I'd been obsessed with cancer for about 6 months because the pain was so severe. And I know that exactly that same thought. So if you have any worries about it, you can ask about it. I'm saying I went to the extreme. I'm not saying go to the extreme, but like a urine cytology test to rule out bladder cancer if you were a smoker. Okay. Anyway, making a long point here. Whatever anesthetic they used to do that, it was a very, very strong anesthetic. I could not pee for 18 hours. Like literally, they sent me home and I had not emptied my bladder. And I don't think I emptied my bladder for another 10 hours. And as my bladder got fuller and fuller and fuller, I was in worse pain. And eventually the anesthetic wore off and I was able to pee at home. But that violated their protocol. You are supposed to be able to urinate on your own before you leave the hospital. They also want you to have a bowel movement if it's not for that, but generally they want to make sure you're eliminating correctly before you're discharged from the hospital. That was very, very traumatic to me. I remember that. And so for my latest hysterectomy, everything that led up to the hysterectomy 5 years ago. So when I went in for my D&C and the anesthesiologist comes out, he's like, okay, is there anything you want to tell me? You have any questions? And I went, I need to be able to pee. I want to be able to get up and urinate within 30 minutes of coming out of this surgery. And he looks at me and he goes, why are you so concerned about this? And I explained what happened. It's like, dude, the last time I was here, I couldn't pee for 10 hours. And it was bad. And he's like, yeah, that was bad. And he goes, well, we know exactly how to do that. Jill, we've got this great, this great new anesthetic called propofol. It's going to knock you out quick. It's going to wake you up quick, and it's not going to change your ability to pee at all. And I'm like, do it. Do it. That's what I want. And oh my God, he was right. I mean, I was able to pee 15 minutes after getting out of the recovery room. So when I went in for my hysterectomy, I made the same request, and I think gastric sleeve, they're both massively invasive surgeries. And I said, I want to be able to pee. Of course, it's shocking that you're now sent home. Like, I was home 3 hours after I walked into the hospital after my hysterectomy. That was shocking. So anyway, he comes in and another one comes in and says, you got any concerns? And I went, yes, I want to be able to pee afterwards. We use propofol. I loved it. Can we please use propofol? And he said, well, propofol is not going to get you numb enough. But what we'll do is we'll use propofol and just a little bit of the other. So just so that we can knock you out. And it was spectacular. Because I remember waking up in the recovery room, the nurse was shaking me, going, it's time to get up. It's time to put your clothes on and go home. And you're laying there going, no, leave me alone. I need to sleep, right? And then she comes back 10 minutes later, shakes you awake. Jill, it's time to get up. Come on, we got to put your clothes on. It's time to go home. And I'm like, and you're like going, oh, what just happened to me? Oh my God. And I needed to pee. And she followed me into the bathroom. So I sat down and I could pee after my hysterectomy. It was like, yes, baby. Thank you. I could pee. And I'm like sitting there and she whips my gown off and puts my sundress on. I had no preparation. She's like, I would just do it here because your sister's getting her car. You're going to go home in 5 minutes. And I'm just like, oh my God. No, wait, that's crazy. So anyway, ask about propofol. So a mix of propofol would be a mix of propofol with something else, because I don't know how they do the gastric sleeve. Is there going to be an incision on your belly, or do they do it down your throat? I don't know how they do it. So if it's an incision on your belly, then they're going to have to use a stronger anesthetic to try to numb everything up, right? So Judy's daughter was a cheerleader. So Judy, if she did flying splits, as almost every cheerleader does, as well as if she fell even once tumbling, that's a source of the injury. But think about flying splits. It's like, woo, bam, it's like the muscles and the nerves land on the ground. And the odds are flying splits were a regular part of her routine. She did it dozens and dozens of times. It's dozens and dozens of trauma to the pelvic muscles. And that would explain why she has tight muscles. Bobby says, what are my thoughts on a pudendal nerve block for pain and numbness of the vaginal hood and pelvic bone? I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea because it's diagnostic. Number one, if they can identify the nerve that is being compromised. So if they do a nerve block and it turns your pain up, that is fantastic. Now we know that the nerve is compromised, but now we have to figure out, why is that nerve compromised? Is that nerve compromised because of tight muscles? If that's the case, the second half of that treatment protocol is going to be trying to work on whatever's compromising it, usually a tight muscle. I don't have problems with nerve blocks at all. I've had a couple of them myself. Cheryl says, what do I think about vaginal Valium? The new urogynecologist said could relax the pelvic floor muscles and bladder crampings. I think vaginal Valium's great. It's absolutely a resource, especially for women who have pain after sex. They also do rectal suppositories for men. So that's great to try to calm a pelvic floor flare. The challenge with vaginal Valium is, number one, finding a pharmacy that can make it for you. It can be a little sedating. And so don't expect that you're or working. It's probably, you're going to have to try it first. I think you're not supposed to drive when you use Valium. But again, the vaginal Valium is chasing a symptom. It's treating a symptom. You have to focus on the underlying cause. The underlying cause is tight pelvic floor muscles. So the hands-on physical therapy is far more important than the vaginal Valium. The vaginal Valium can get you through a flare, but we got to get hands on those muscles to figure out why you're tight in the first place and where you're tight and how you're tight and all that sort of stuff. Janet says, couldn't pee for days after the last surgery. They sent you home with a catheter. Wow, man, they really numb that nerve. Jennifer said, my primary doctor told me instead, you need a psychiatrist, and immediately left the exam room. I was there because I had bladder pain so severe. Jennifer, I'm so sorry, hon. I'll tell you why that happened. IC in medical literature was literally first described in the middle 1800s. If you read that description back then, it uses older language, perfect for today. Then in the 1920s, they invented a cystoscope, and a Dr. Guy Hunner is the guy who found some of the lesions in the bladder wall, which is why they're called Hunner's lesions. So that lesion on the bladder wall, visible, not mental, right? Then in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 40s, and basically around World War II, we had research that showed that, look at this. Men can have these weird symptoms, and children can have these weird symptoms. This frequency, consistent frequency, urgency, pressure, etc. And then in the 50s, two arrogant pricks of two doctors published a case study of a young woman with frequency, urgency, pressure pain who said she had, quote, unexpressed anger manifested in the pelvis, and implied that every IC patient needed mental health. What did that do? Well, that's when some IC patients were sent to mental hospitals. And don't you assume that happened just in the 50s and 60s, hon. That's happened in the last 10 years. The last patient that happened to that I worked with, she's a friend of mine. She has severe pelvic pain, post-herpetic pain syndrome. She was a little suicidal, and her doctor sent. She wasn't suicidal, but she was going that way. Now, she's not a typical IC patient. She had long history of abuse and just terror. It's a miracle she's alive, but she is alive. Anyway, they called the authorities, who came to her apartment, told her she had police and an ambulance, and they said, ma'am, we need to take you to a mental hospital. They strapped her down on a gurney. Can I swear? Will you think less of me if I swear right now? They strapped her onto a gurney for 2 fucking hours. No bathroom break. She was in an ambulance on a gurney for 2 hours, screaming, I need to go to the bathroom. Severe pain, crying, hysterical. She gets to the mental hospital. It's up in Minnesota. She's sobbing. They walk her in, holding her arm. And she's sobbing, I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom. Please let me go to the bathroom. And they went, no, we don't know what you'll do. And she said, come with me. I got nothing to hide. You come with me. So they went into the bathroom with her. She sat down on the toilet and she peed. I tell you, she peed like a horse. At the end of that, her pain was gone, or much better. This was 10 years ago, my friend. 2 hours later, the head of the mental hospital came to her and personally apologized. Ma'am, you should not be here. You do not have a mental problem. You have a bladder problem. All because of those two assholes in the 50s who had the audacity to say that a young woman with frequency urgency pressure pain had a mental problem. And from the 50s to 1990, medical schools taught that IC patients needed mental health. 1990, 30 years ago. You need to be pissed off about this. We all need to be pissed off about this. And I'm being real here, guys. I wish you could be I'm being real. These are people I work with. So don't accept anybody. My answer back is, and why is there blood in my urine? My answer back is, and why do I feel better when I empty my bladder? Why does sex hurt? Why does driving a car make me flare? Got to refocus them back. You know, they got the old textbook from the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. I hate to tell you stories like that, but it's very important that you know these stories so that you can advocate for yourself. Nobody should be telling you that you need to see a psychiatrist to treat your bladder symptoms. And I'll tell you, Dr. Dan Brookoff, when he came out and spoke at our pain conference, he shared how he learned about IC when he was in medicine. He was an internal medicine doctor. And so they had one day of lectures dedicated to urology by one of the top doctors even today that we know. And at the very end of this 8-hour course of all various things that can happen to the bladder and the prostate, he goes at the speaker, literally packing up his stuff. He goes, "Oh, I got to tell you, there's one group of patients that are going to drive you crazy. They have interstitial cystitis. They're going to call you over and over and over again because they're always in pain. And it's a mental issue. It's just a mental issue." This was like in 1985 or something when he was in med school, 87. And one of the students said, "Well, how do you treat it?" And he said something like, "Oh, we just take out their bladder." And then another medical student said, "Well, why would you take out the bladder if it's all in their head?" At which point in time, the doctor very quickly shuffled off the stage and went and didn't take the question. Okay. There is no doubt that interstitial cystitis is real. There is no doubt that some of you have bloody lesions on your bladder wall. That is not all in your head. There is no doubt that many of us have central sensitization. Many of us have pelvic floor issues. And you know what? Listen, many of us have struggled with depression and anxiety, myself included, because there's nothing worse than having pain and not having people believe you. Guys, I'm 62. I had my first symptoms when I was 14. I am pain-free. I did bladder therapies for 30 years. They did nothing for me. What worked for me was pelvic floor physical therapy and then using PEA to calm all the skin sensitivity down. So the next time that happens, Jennifer, if anybody had the audacity to have that, if anybody had the audacity to say anything like that to you guys, would you just please pretend that I'm standing right next to you and I'm just looking at you going, "Go, girl. Do it." Ask the question. Why? How can a mental condition cause a wound in my bladder? See what they have to say. Carrie said it's laparoscopic. So the fact that your surgery is going to be laparoscopic is encouraging, because then maybe they might not have to do the really, really, really strong anesthetic. So just ask the anesthesiologist. Let them know that you're very worried about bathroom access. You want to be able to urinate fairly quickly, and let's see what they've got to say. Donna says, I've been outside today cutting down a tree. Cutting down a tree with a lot of lifting. I really felt faint, had to sit down immediately, felt like falling. I had to stop lifting. Now I'm sitting on a heating pad. Sounds like you were exerting yourself a little bit much. And if you have had COVID, then, if that continues, if you keep getting faint with exertion, you need to talk to your doctor, hon. You need to talk to your doctor. Be careful sitting on the heating pad. You got to be careful where you put the heat. Normally you put the heat on your butt cheek. You don't put the heat between your legs, because you have mucous membranes there. We don't necessarily, we don't want to create an environment for yeast to grow. Yeast love warm, hot environments. And so generally you don't sit directly on the heating pad. You have it over to the left, over to the right, but not touching your crotch. Hold on a sec. Where is it? We have this a gel pack that is the shape of a menstrual pad, and you can put it in the fridge and make it cold. And so remember, heat relaxes muscle, cold relaxes nerves. So otherwise, you want to do like one of our big microwavable heating pads that's like really big. Or we have our stick-on heating pads that's about this big, our body heat heating pads that you can attach to your underwear, and it'll deliver heat for about 10 hours. Jenna says, it does piss me off. Becky says, wow, even women who had given birth were sent to a psychiatrist? Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. God forbid you be young. God forbid you be in your early 20s and you're not mature enough to advocate for yourself. And strong enough to advocate for yourself. It's very hard. Guys, listen, I got to speak to the women out there. You do understand what's happening right now. You have to be in control of your health care, not a politician. You. And there is a very consistent movement away from women having control over her body. You have to see the trend, what's happening right now. And so if you want to be able to advocate for yourself, then vote blue. Because and listen, I'm speaking as a former Republican. I try not to get political in these discussions, but what's happening right now is taking us back to the 40s and the 50s, and we can't do it. My body. What is the best type of calcium supplement that is bladder friendly? Calcium glycerophosphate, and it will also reduce some of the acid. Calcium citrate. Not really that worried about calcium irritating the bladder. Kayleen says, I think I found out where this PGAD stuff is coming from. I told my pain management doctor about my symptoms since my hip is hurting so bad. She said there's a big connection around those nerves. There is a massive connection around those nerves. And yes, that could be right around the pudendal nerve. So again, let's see. I think it's useful if we, I'm sure the word I was looking for is autonomy. Women need to have autonomy. one of the far right wackadoos was actually it said women are the lesser of the sexes. What? Oh, for God's sake! I'm sorry. We women, come on. We got to pass the. Oh, don't even get me started. All right, so Kayleen, here we go. Hip, hip. And on the inside, look, you can see the 4 holes on each side, left and right, that the nerves emerge from the spinal cord directly to those muscles that are directly connected to your hip. So do you see those holes there? Those are where the nerves emerge. They emerge as a group or independently, then they merge into a group, and then they split out again after they pass through a certain tunnel in there. So there is an absolute connection between a bad hip and your pelvic floor and the nerves. Absolutely, 100%. Donna said, "Thank you. I've learned so much." Yeah, you're welcome, hun. My job is to educate, inform, kick you in the butt, get you back to your doctor with new questions. And listen, I've had a week. I'm a little bit in your face today. I apologize if I am. I just had to get up so early. I didn't get a lot of sleep the first couple of days, and then I just had such a bad reaction to the COVID booster. It just knocked me on my tush. Donna says, I've been asked to go see a dietitian and psychiatrist for my IBSD and losing my bladder. I haven't done it yet. Okay, on the heating pad, and I will call on my doctor tomorrow. Good. Listen, I have no problem. We have got, this is a blessing. We're all older now. We don't have anything to prove. We don't have to fake it. We don't have to fake that we have our lives together. God didn't give you the skills to deal with IC and the anxiety and depression when you were born. We have to go learn those skills. And you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are specialists out there who have already worked with patients struggling with intense pain or chronic pain or pelvic pain, who can hold your hand and walk you through this process. And why not use that? And to have somebody that you can talk to help you through those darker moments when you're struggling, that's a blessing. And so I'm full on if working with a mental health professional. I needed it. IC Network was my PhD proposal for psychology, which I couldn't fix. Ironically, I couldn't finish because I couldn't sit in the car. I had so much pain for so long. So it's very entertaining that my doctoral dissertation project is still rated #1 in the world by Harvard Medical School 30 years later, which is cool. But listen, I had all the degrees and I couldn't cope. I had to go talk to somebody. And I don't regret it at all. There is a blessing when you can share your burden and when you can say, how do patients do this? How can I do this? And just give you tips and strategies. And it's not what's wrong with you. It's responding to what happened to you. Remember, we think of this as injury or trauma rather than disease now. And for the person who's the cheerleader daughter or granddaughter had very tight muscles, it's what happened to her body, not her fault. She just got hurt. Kayleen said, physical therapy ended, so now I need another referral. I'd rather have pelvic floor physical therapy than drugs and steroid injection. Well, Kayleen, you're going to have to use what we call a multimodal approach. Listen, you got into a dire situation with your pelvis. I mean, your pain was off the charts and your symptoms were off the charts. And so it's going to be trying as many different things as you can to try to slowly but steadily heal everything. And you're making progress, girl. You've done some physical therapy. We know the muscles are tight. We now know that you've got a back issue going on. And so you're well on your way. You're halfway up the staircase. And you've got skills now that you didn't have 3 months ago that will only serve you well. So keep it up, girl. Keep it up. And ask for that referral. All right, here, hold on a sec. I blocked my YouTube. See, I haven't drunk enough today. You can tell I'm a little dehydrated. I've already walked. First thing I did this morning is I walked. So Eva says, I had a rectocele repair, and after a week, I had UTI symptoms. Doctor did a culture. I tested positive. She gave me the antibiotic for a week. It didn't work. So she did another culture test. I was positive, and the doctor gave another week of antibiotics. It didn't work. Then she did another test, and I was negative, but you still had symptoms. So Evie, Evie, at that one, you can tell if I'm pointing here, that's YouTube. If I'm pointing here, that's Facebook, and if I'm pointing here, that's Instagram. And Instagram, you guys we're probably gonna hit our time limit fairly quickly. So Eva, you had what we call a nosocomial infection. You had a hospital-acquired infection. This is one of the great challenges in healthcare right now, is that in hospitals, you've got the sickest patients with the most severe diseases, the most severe infections, and there's a lot of cross-contamination. And because bacteria can splatter anywhere, and it can splatter on the floor, it can splatter on jackets. A doctor goes to one room and works with the patient, gets a little bit of bacteria on their jacket or on their gloves. They go to the next room, and let's just say they take the gloves off, but then they touch their jacket, which has been contaminated. So nosocomial infections are just, they're a challenge. They tend to be more severe. They tend to be more drug resistant because that's what you get in hospitals. There's more severe patients who require hospitalization. Generally, if you were to continue to be negative, positive, I would say a next generation DNA urine test is a must, because we need to figure out what antibiotics would be the most effective, and a next generation DNA urine test would do that. Eva, she told you might even have IC baloney. Well, let me take that back. So what the hell does IC mean? IC means you have frequency, urgency, pressure, pain, and they don't know why. IC is a grab bag diagnosis. It is not a useful diagnosis at all. In the diagnostic criteria for IC, you are excluded from being diagnosed with IC if you have had if you've tested positive for infection like in the last 6 weeks. So you would not normally be diagnosed with IC if you've had a recent positive culture. You are presumed to have cystitis. Cystitis means bladder wall irritation, bacterial cystitis. Or you can have fungal cystitis, or you can have viral cystitis. Eva said, after almost 3 months, my symptoms got mild, but I still go to pee every 20 minutes. Eva, how old are you, hun? How old are you? Because we may have also, unfortunately, entered that point where your estrogen levels have now dropped. Your bladder wall is now getting thinner. It cannot defend itself. And sometimes there's the whole estrogen thing kind of gets revealed. The estrogen atrophy can be revealed in that way. You guys on Instagram, you're being very quiet. And you guys, this is only my second time doing this on Instagram, and I just don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't even know how many people are watching on Instagram. I can't tell. And I know I need to be doing an Instagram only support group too. I just haven't had time. All right. Jana says, I will ask more questions with my pelvic physical therapist gal this week. Wish more true caring, educated doctors were available. Yeah. Jeannie says, I was supposed to have an MRI this past week. I only lasted 10 minutes out of an hour because I was in so much bladder pain. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. You know, I mean, that's where, honestly, what you could do, I mean, as sucky as it would be, is you could potentially ask to be catheterized during the MRI so that you don't have to worry about emptying your bladder. Donna says, I'm taking a bladder rest. Could you explain the dosing? Well, I mean, you can take up to 4 a day. Most people, we always say, whenever you start a new supplement or a therapy, start slow. Like 1 capsule, so you got to do for a couple of days with 1 a day. Then you can go to 2 a day. Then you can go to 3 a day or 4 a day. Just know that for some people, you just stay at 1 or 2. That if you go more, it might give you a loose bowel, like it did to me. That was with Sister Protect. So some people do 1 a day, some people do 2 a day, some people do 4 a day. It's just about finding what works for you. Don't go beyond 4. Taking it with food is important. You never take it on an empty stomach. And of course, if you have any side effects, then, you know, stop what you're doing, back off, reconsider. Judy said, I went to the ER a couple of weeks ago for terrible stomach pain. I have SIBO and other GI issues. Doctor did a CAT scan, but would not do an abdominal MRI. CAT scan didn't show anything, which I figured as much. But why would he not do the MRI? I wish he would have been there with me. He sent me home with a prescription I can't take because of Sjogren's. Probably because the MRI was booked, or it would have cost too much. That would be my guess. I'm sorry, honey. Judy, I'm so sorry that you went through that. Jeannie says, I can only pee standing up, so the pain was unbearable. Do you know if you can have a catheter while in an MRI? I don't see why you couldn't, because it's not metal. I'm asking my doctor tomorrow. I'm just wondering if you knew. Doctor says, I have to have an MRI so they can figure out what's going on with all my pain. Yeah, I don't see why a catheter, I mean, well, let's just hold on. Can you have a catheter? Oh, Instagram just sent me a message. Hang on, we're telling more followers to join your video. Oh, that's pretty cool. Are Foley catheters safe for an MRI? Standard Foley catheter systems are composed of a rubber tube with an inflatable balloon. Thus, they are considered MRI safe. Yeah. So that's a good workaround. Another thing that they could do is there's another device, except I don't think the radiology people would like it, where they can put a plastic, it's like a little wand between your legs, like right up by your urethra, and it will just suck any urine that comes out. It will suck it away. But I think that the Foley catheter would be a quick, I think with maybe some Xanax, something that will just calm you down a little bit while you're going through it, maybe a little bit of pain meds. I think you'll be able to do it. Donna said, I had an MRI with contrast bladder. MRI with contrast, bladder pain. I took a lot of azo. I had bladder pain for weeks. Donna, bladder rest, like Bladder Builder and Sister Protect and System Mend, they give the bladder what it needs, which is chondroitin. The bladder is composed of chondroitin. There's more to it in the urothelium, just chondroitin, but chondroitin plays a critical role in the superficial integrity of the bladder wall. And so that's why we use chondroitin-based supplements. And so they're believed to kind of coat the bladder, and our hope is that the bladder might be able to use some of that chondroitin, but nobody's been able to prove that that's actually happening. It's a best guess. No, I have to take that back. No, because we had a study presented 2 years ago at the ESIC meeting that showed that chondroitin was the single most important ingredient in a bladder installation because, okay, so I'm wrong. No, they have experiment research. So anyway, nothing can repair your bladder. There is no treatment that will physically repair your bladder. Only your bladder can repair itself. So what we have to do is we have to create an environment that will support bladder repair. And the way we do that is we don't pour acid in the wound because that's going to get in the way of healing. We don't want to trigger nerves with caffeine because that's going to get in the way of healing. And do things that are calming and soothing, like chamomile herbal tea and chondroitin. So Donna says, if you can take 4 a day of bladder rest, is that more helpful than 2? Yeah, the more the better. But if you're looking for a really, really, really strong bladder coating effect, then Cystoment is the best. It's the strongest bladder coating because that's 3 times the amount of the essential ingredient. So more is potentially helpful as long as you're not vulnerable to side effects. Oh man, you know what? I gotta say, this is something. It's a very interesting concept. So, is more better? And for those of us who are sensitive, I don't think more is better. More is not better for me. I'm too sensitive. My body does not like me to take stuff. Less is better for me. I always look for the lowest effective dose, not the highest effective dose. Getting back to the National Institutes of Health meeting, one of the studies, and we've seen this replicated recently, Elavil, amitriptyline, is a low-dose antidepressant that over time calms nerves down. And what research has continued to show is that the higher the dose of Elavil, the better the effect. So generally you start at 5 or 10, but the therapeutic dose is like 75. And again, the research says, okay, the higher the dose, the better. Unfortunately, the side effects are massive. And it's a rare patient who can take a lot of Elavil. Elavil can cause dry mouth, dry eyes, weight gain. You gain 20 pounds like in a month. At least I did when I was on Elavil. And Elavil can really mess your heart up. It changes the conductivity of the heart muscle. And so that's what Elavil did to me, is it activated a third node in my heart. So normally your heartbeat is beep, 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 beep. Well, my heartbeat after 3 months of Elavil was beep, 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 beep. And if 2 of the nodes beat at the same time, it was like beep, 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 beep. And it was scary. Oh my God. And it took 6 months to figure out what had happened to my heart because of Elavil. So, and I still have it every now and then. I still have that third node. It just tends to be a little bit quiet, unless I do caffeine. If I do caffeine, I'm screwed. If I do anything with caffeine, my heart is screwed. It is ugly. So that's an example of where more is better, but then you can't force yourself through that. You don't want to irreversibly I'm not going to damage my heart more. No way. If a medication interferes with your quality of life, then that is not probably the medication for you. Lisa says, I'm on an antibiotic right now due to a supposed sinus infection. It seems it's just a virus as it lasts for over a week already. My stomach and bladder are both so irritated by the antibiotic, and I'm counting the days down the last 2 days, but then it's like starting back to square one with the healing again. It is a vicious and endless cycle. Lisa, did they find bacteria when they did a sinus swab? Did they find bacteria? I mean, did they culture it out and tell you what it was? Or is this just a guess? Is it just a guess? And also, what antibiotic are you on? My guess would be the antibiotic most notorious for irritating the bladder is Augmentin. So what antibiotic do they have you on? She didn't do a culture just to guess. See, isn't that unfortunate? It's just so unfortunate. You know, because antibiotics do nothing for viral infections. And you guys, allergies this year are off the charts insane. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, we've got these rhinoviruses going around, these terrible colds going around. We've got terrible allergies going on. It's a quick guess. So amoxicillin clav, which I'm pretty sure is Augmentin, right? I think it is. Yeah, honey, it's Augmentin. The rule of thumb now is we don't normally do an antibiotic unless a proper infection has been identified. So Lisa, let's just plant a seed here for a moment. Let's say you get through it, but 2 weeks from now, the sinus headache comes back. I mean, I've had a sinus headache off and on this entire year, including this morning after walking in the wind. If it comes back, don't ask for more antibiotic. You need to have her do a swab and test it first, because we don't want to destroy your biome, and that's what they're doing. They basically, the antibiotics are destroying the healthy balance of bacteria in your body, and unnecessarily potentially. So, antibiotic stewardship is important. And concept number one with antibiotic stewardship is don't give an antibiotic to somebody who has a viral infection. It is meaningless. It will do nothing. Number two, if you suspect infection, identify it. Don't guess. Try to identify it. And number three, long-term antibiotics are really dangerous. Don't do long-term either. So I feel your sinus pain literally right now. Eva said, your pain is manageable, but the frequency is still there. I did an MRI. They told me my pelvis is fine, but I still pee every 20 minutes. All right. So Eva, then we need to consider the concept of cause versus effect. So what else would cause you needing to urinate 20 minutes? Well, frequency urgency is being driven by the nerves directly in the bladder wall. These are called alpha. And so if the alpha nerves that tell you need to pee, so they're easy to turn on and hard to turn off. These are the first nerves to get activated if there's any sort of bladder trauma going on. So the first thing that I would want to know is, what is the health of my skin? What is the health of my bladder? My vulva, my vagina? Think about your bladder for a moment. It's the only organ in the human body designed to hold toxic waste, because urine is body waste. It contains ammonia and urea. So how can the bladder hold ammonia for hours at a time and not get damaged? It's really an evolutionary marvel. Well, it turns out your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ covered with a really thick coating of wetness, of mucus. And this mucus acts as a barrier. It is a big, strong barrier that prevents the ammonia from reaching the cells. And it makes it much harder for bacteria to penetrate down into the cells to cause an infection. So we call it the mighty mucus. It's called the glycosaminoglycan layer. It's a big, wet coating. Unfortunately, it is estrogen dependent. So when you're young and you have lots of estrogen, you have lots of mucus. And you can get away with drinking coffee and stuff like that. But unfortunately, as your estrogen levels change, your mucosal barrier also changes. And as your estrogen levels drop, your mucosal barrier gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And for some women, it disappears. And so what happens is your bladder wall is now completely exposed. There's no protection. It's not a disease. It is estrogen atrophy. We call this the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So there's no active disease process happening. It just means you're dry. So if the vulva is dry and the vagina is dry, then so is the urethra and so is the bladder. So the very first thing I'm going to suspect in a woman who's peeing every 20 minutes is that your bladder wall is compromised. Generally, it's compromised by dryness from estrogen atrophy. So that's our therapeutic priority for this group, estrogen. When you give that estrogen, it immediately produces mucus. And that's exactly what that skin needs to get healthy again. The cell goes from being a raisin to being a nice, healthy, plump, moist cell. So topical estrogen therapy is always our therapeutic priority for an older patient or a woman who's had hysterectomy or a woman who's been on Lupron. We give that skin estrogen, it immediately heals. It starts to heal. Now, the second thing, if you were on the phone with me right now, it's like, okay, when I see somebody peeing every 20 minutes, I'm immediately thinking, okay, is there something else that's triggering the bladder? Because that's a sign that we have a very, very irritated bladder wall. And that's when we have to look at food. Do you take a multivitamin every day? If you do, multivitamins do not work well for IC patients unless you do a low acid vitamin like our Bladder Smart vitamin. So if you take a multivitamin every day that has vitamin C in it, that could easily explain bladder irritation. Number two, do you drink water out of a Brita water filter? Some water filters are too good. They take all the pH balancing minerals out of the water and you end up drinking acid water all day. Or the opposite is true. If somebody's told you to drink alkaline water all day, well, that's also quite damaging because you have no protective coating. Alkaline water is dilute bleach. That's going to hurt. And it could go right back to that 1 cup of coffee a day. The patients who suffer the most by far are the patients who have 1 cup of coffee or 1 soda a day because the bladder can never heal. If you pour acid on a wound in the bladder every single day, you destroy the next generation of cells. Every acid irritation sets you back 2 weeks worth of tissue growth. It is physically impossible for the bladder to repair itself if you're bathing it in acid every day. So Eva says, how is it that estrogen can penetrate the bladder wall if we only use it topically? Because it has estrogen receptors, hon. Every cell is like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And there are keys hanging off the cell, the receptors. And if you think about it, let me see. Think about a, let's see, a good way to, think about a tennis ball. So that's the cell. Now, that tennis ball has a hard coating on the outside because that hard coating is keeping the cell intact. But we still have to get nourishment through the hard coating into the center of the cell. How do we do that? Well, it's like a key and lock system. There are receptors of different sizes and shapes all over that tennis ball. And certain molecules will attach to certain receptors. And when it attaches to that receptor, it basically, it's like, okay, so here's the receptor, and here's the chemical that matches the receptor. It's kind of like this. So it goes in, it clicks in the lock, kind of locks down, and it will pull it through. It will actually pull that molecule through, and then it will close up right behind it. So it's all about this kind of key and lock system. And so there are just tons of estrogen receptors on the surface of the cell. So the cells immediately absorb the estrogen. It leaves out the other stuff, but it will take the estrogen right in. Does that make sense, hon? Ravonda said, last week you mentioned something about Sjogren's affecting the bladder being an autoimmune component of IC. Could you expand on this, and how does Sjogren affect the bladder? Well, in the earliest studies that were done on IC back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, they were looking at related conditions. And they very clearly identified Sjogren's and lupus modestly common in the IC patient population. And that data was like 2 to 3% of IC patients have Sjogren's or lupus. And I happen to have the book right here, as a matter of fact. Let's see if it's in this book. Here it is, page 306 and 318. Now, why would it be on Hunner's lesion page? Huh? That's weird. Let's see. Let me go to the other page. I think that's a table of contents error. Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, look at this. I got your answer. Do you remember we were talking about the key and lock system, the whole key and lock receptor and the things that activate the receptors? An autoantibody receptor studied extensively in the pathogenesis of Sjogren's syndrome has been seen in bladder wall biopsies, suggesting that those antibodies and autoantibodies may be associated with interstitial cystitis. And of course, that was an old theory back then. Let me look in one other spot. Oh, my messy bookshelf. I did not clean you. This is the only textbook that's ever been published on interstitial cystitis, bladder pain syndrome. This is available for about $200 on Amazon. Do not buy it. Do not buy it. It's a little bit older. Instead, buy IC 101. It's not just a bladder disease. It's much more relevant to you these days. But let me just see what these guys say. It's not worth spending $200 on, that's for sure. Okay, page 17. Here we go. List of diseases, conditions with increased prevalence among patients with IC: asthma, IBS, fibro, chronic fatigue, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, lupus, vulvodynia, endometriosis, migraine, TMJ, low back pain, sensitive skin. So 3/4 of those were related to chronic overlapping pain conditions and injured central nervous system. But the Sjogren's and the lupus and the inflammatory bowel disease and the rheumatoid arthritis are more autoimmune conditions. And here we go. So in this study, 5% of Sjogren's syndrome patients had IC symptoms, just 5%. So we actually talked about that this week. I mean, I do believe that autoimmune cystitis is a subtype in a very small population of patients, and that the autoimmune system itself is driving some of the bladder sensitivity and the bladder breakdown. But it's not for everybody. It's just for a small percentage. And I know I did not explain it. Sorry. Hi, Sue. Thank you. I was ready. I was over. My hair was down below my back, and it was so heavy, and I was just done. New Jill, new you, new me. Judy says, I use compounded estrogen cream. My doctor said use a pea-type about twice a day, just a little inside the vagina, non-surrounding tissue. Should I be putting more inside your vagina? Well, I can't get in the way of you and your doctor. That's not my place to, I mean, I'm not your, I cannot give you direct medical advice. I would say that that's, it really depends on the quality and health of your skin and where your pain is. So like for me, I use my estrogen, but I use it really around my urethra and on my vulva. I don't really go into my vagina very much because honestly, I'm not having sex because I'm not in a relationship right now. And so I'm not really that worried. I mean, every now and then I can feel a little bit of vaginal prickliness, which I know is related to dry skin. And that's when I'll use it in my vagina. Most of the time, I really just use it on my labia and especially right at the entrance to my urethra. Okay, my phone, here, hold on a sec. Instagram, you guys, my phone has, I gotta plug it in. Hold on. Oh, we're crooked now. Okay, we're charging. Uh-oh. Okay. Wait, hold on. No, I don't want to reboot my phone, for God's sake. No. Okay, now, you guys, let's see. Hello, Instagram. So, hey, my name is Jill. I'm the National IC Support Group Leader and the president of the founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. And you have just joined a live support group meeting that we are streaming also on YouTube and Facebook. I usually do these every Sunday in the early afternoon here in California, late afternoon on the East Coast. Happy to take your questions and see if we can help at all. I want to educate, inspire, encourage, and then send you back to your doctor with a new set of questions. A lot has changed in the last 5 years, guys. A lot has changed. We don't even think of IC as a bladder disease anymore. And if you look at our brand new guidelines, we don't think of this as a disease. We think of this as a pelvic pain syndrome, often with a neuromuscular origin. And that's a huge, huge change from the last 5 years. So for those men and women out there, you have been doing bladder therapies for 10, 20, 30 years, and you're not getting better. Our new guidelines are very clear. If you're not responding to therapy, if you're getting progressively worse rather than better, stop what you're doing, take a step back, revisit the diagnosis. What have we missed? Because for many of you, You have a muscle injury and you have no clue you have a muscle injury. You have a broken tailbone. There can be any number of things that can be causing the bladder to react. Like in my case, honestly, come on, I had my first symptoms when I was 14. I'm 62. I did bladder therapies for decades. They never worked. And I did urethral dilations, you name it, I did it. Never worked. I still flared. I was still uncomfortable all the time. I still had IBS. I still had vulvodynia. I still had all these related pain conditions. What worked for me was the recognition that, oh, wait a second, not everybody has a bladder issue. A lot of us have muscle issues. A lot of us have nerve problems. And guess what? I am muscle driven. I had a hydrodistension 5 years ago after my hysterectomy. My doctor took pictures for me again. And he goes, Jill, this absolutely proves it was never your bladder. Never. I have a baby bladder. It's a perfect little bladder. So for those of you out there, you had a cystoscope and your bladder is normal, then take that for what that means. That's great news. Now you have to begin your search to try to figure out what's triggering it. And for many, if not most of you, it means that it's your muscles. Your muscles are part of the problem. Or your nerves are a problem. If you've got IC, IBS, vulvodynia, fibromyalgia, if you have two or more of the overlapping pain conditions, then you have a central nervous system injury. And bladder therapies won't work. And no, it's not like you have a bladder disease and a bowel disease and this and that, and you're feeling crazy like, oh God, please leave me alone. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay. That's how I felt in my 20s. You don't have all these weird diseases. What you have is an injured central nervous system. An injured nervous system becomes a sensitive nervous system. It means that nerves get turned on much easier. It means that things which shouldn't hurt, hurt. How do we know if you have central sensitization? Super sensitive skin. Can you wear wool? I can't. I've never been able to wear wool. I cannot even wear a waffle weave cotton shirt. I have to turn some of my shirts inside out because I can't take the seams. I have to tape down the seams here sometimes. Sometimes this seam right here can drive me crazy. Okay. You got a wicked sense of smell. Can you smell things that other people can't smell, and do smells drive you absolutely crazy? It's so weird that a smell triggers pain, but it does. That if we are exposed to a smell which triggers us, because smell is a brain function. This is all about the nerves in your brain too. And so it's very odd to me that I can remember when I was away at college and I came back to visit for Christmas or whatever, my parents brought me into my bedroom where I was like literally knocked over by the smell of wood, wood polish or wood stain. And they had, while I was gone, stained down the windowsill, the wooden windowsill. And I burst into tears and ran out of the room. And they're like, what's wrong with Jill? The smell was overwhelming. And I still feel bad about it because they really tried to do something very nice for me. But now we know Aunt Jill has a super sensitive sense of smell. That's how sensitive my brain is to smell. That is a classic presentation of somebody with central sensitization, or if you have sensitivity to light. And as a kid, I would always have my, I'd be trying to watch TV, but the light over here would bother my eyes. So I'd be like this watching the TV, and people were like, why are you doing that? It's like the light hurts. Okay. That is a classic sign of central sensitization. So why does that happen? Well, now we know why. That the brain and the central nervous system can be traumatized. And generally, it's traumatized by injury For 80% of the people that this happens to, there is a physical injury. 14 days, all it takes is 14 days of pain left untreated to change your brain to make it more sensitive. Or 20 days of bullying or abuse. And that's the example that, that's pretty much what happened to me. And I've told this story. I grew up in a neighborhood with a rapist murderer. My neighbor was raped and murdered. And I live in a really nice part of California. The very, very severely mentally ill kid. And I was one of his early victims. He went for me when I was in 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade and 9th grade. He had a lot of victims. I did not leave my home from 4th grade through high school without fear. So normally, in the way a non-traumatized brain works is if you were to open up your front door and you see a tiger running towards you, the most primitive part of your brain takes over. That is the sympathetic nervous system. It has one job: to save your life. It sees the threat. It immediately takes control of your brain. It raises your heart rate. It raises your blood pressure. It tightens your muscles to prepare you to fight or flee or freeze, right? There's no cognition happening in here. You cannot think yourself out of this. This is the most animal part of the human brain. It has one job: to save your life. That's it. So you slam the door. Woo! The tiger hits the door, but the tiger can't get in. You're safe. You call the authorities. They come out. They tranquilize it. They take it away. It's gone. At that point in time, the threat is now gone. You are now safe. At that point in time that you are safe, the parasympathetic nervous system retakes control of the brain. It relaxes everything. It reduces your heart rate. It reduces your blood pressure. It relaxes your muscles. And so fight or flight is only meant for periods of great stress. You know, it goes back 50,000 years, 100,000 years. It's how you saved yourself when you saw the tiger running towards you, or the lion, or the wolf. So fight or flight is really only supposed to be on for very, very limited amounts of time. It's the parasympathetic nervous system, the calm part of the nervous system, which is supposed to be controlling your brain. And so in all of the research studying chronic overlapping pain conditions, the IC and the IBS and the vulvodynia, because that's what happened to me. So I couldn't sit through class at school when I was 14, all through junior high. I had to pee at least once an hour. Teachers were really pissed off at me. Then in high school, I got the vulvodynia. And it was bad. I mean, I should have had stock and monostat. Then when I was in my 20s, I got IBS. And it wasn't little IBS. It was laying down in my bathroom in the fetal position every single morning, not being able to move because the bowel spasms were so bad. Then all these weird, creepy sensitivities happened. Then the migraines happened. Then when I was 32, I had bladder pain for the first time. Okay, what the hell is that? Well, that's classic. That is classic central sensitization. So what the research is, and I just want to say that when you're in it, you feel like a freak. People don't treat you well. What the hell's wrong with Jill? Why is she ruining Christmas again? Why is it, I had enough to say to me, you just want attention. You're just doing this to get the attention. No, I wasn't doing it to get the attention. I was miserable. and profoundly depressed and with massive anxiety disorder. Audrey says I can so relate. And you just want to live because you're not living. You're watching life pass you by. Your friends are out getting married and having babies, and you're at home laying in the fetal position on the bathroom every damn morning. That was my 20s. It's a miracle I got through grad school, but I took grad school at night, right? Okay. So what's happening? What the brain studies have shown is that it's an injured central nervous system. It's not mental illness. It's not mental illness. Listen to me. It's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you. You were hurt. Physically, you were hurt. And so we now know that 14 days of pain will put the brain into a constant state of fight or flight. We know that 20 days of abuse and bullying will put the brain into a constant state of fight or flight. How do I know you got this? You have sensitive skin, you have 2 or more conditions, and you struggle with anxiety disorder. Any of you out there right now, if you have anxiety disorder, you have central sensitization. You're not alone. No shame, no blame. You're my sister. You're my brother. And I'm so happy to know you. And I'm so happy to be that person who gives you a hug and looks you in the eyes. It's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. And I can tell you what happened. And when somebody does that, oh my God, the weight moves away. The weight is gone. I no longer carry any shame. It was never my fault. And there's a real happy ending here. We know how to fix it. Bladder therapies aren't going to fix it. DMSO is not going to fix it. Elmeron's not going to fix it. What's going to fix it is telling your brain you're safe. And how do we do that with good sensory information? We've got to teach your brain that you're safe. I can turn fight or flight off with you in 5 minutes. I can turn it off in 5 minutes. I do it every day. The challenge is keeping you there. You want to learn how to turn it off? I'll tell you how to turn it off. So there's no cognition. There's nothing you can't think yourself out of getting out of central sensitization. It's not about going to therapy and talking about stuff. But if you need to do it, do it. Go for it. I'm all for that, 100%. Because we all have to deal with whatever trauma happened. Obviously, you can tell I had a lot of trauma. But I am blessed to now use that trauma to help a lot of other people, and that's gratitude that I have for you. Okay, we're going to turn it off right now. So I double dog dare you to try it. We're not going to think it through. We're going to prove to your brain right now that you are physically safe and it is okay to disconnect, fight, or flight. Okay, so let's do it. 5 minutes. Just come with me. I want you to pick something in your room that you like to look at. Pick something in your room that you like to look at. And so I have got this beautiful stained glass thing right behind my computer here that I put candles in. It's really pretty, beautiful winter scene. So let's pick something that we like to look at. And we're going to do a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And let's do that. Let's do a couple of deep breaths because I should have started with that. Let's do a really good deep breath. We're going to breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Let's breathe out for 8. And I want to do that one more time. Let's breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. And breathe out for 8. Now I want you to go back and just look at what you like to look at. It could be a puppy, could be a dog, could be a photograph, could be out the window at some flowers. Just pick something that you like to look at. Okay, deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, now we're going to engage the sense of hearing. What can you hear besides my voice? Are there any other sounds in your environment? Do you hear wind? Do you hear a furnace? Do you hear somebody talking in the distance? Do you hear somebody music playing? Just close your eyes and just ask yourself, what can I listen to? What am I listening to right now? And I hear wind. Okay, deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, we're going to go for the sense of smell. What can you smell right now? Is dinner cooking? Is there a candle lit somewhere? Are there any odors? And this is where aromatherapy really helps. So like I always have my Mario Badescu room spray, right? Spray a little bit. That gets my brain away from thinking about anxiety and instead focusing on this wonderful sense of smell. So what do you smell? I want you to focus on that for a couple of seconds. Okay, deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, now we're going to go to the sense of taste. Any flavors in your mouth? Any flavors? So I have been drinking my fruit smoothie. Fruit smoothie. Somebody wanted to know what it was. Okay, so you got any flavors in your mouth? If you don't, that's okay. If you do, focus on the flavor for a couple of seconds. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, now we're going to engage in touch. So I want you to take your hand and I want you to either rub it on your chair arms or rub it on your legs. I'm going to rub it on my legs because I'm wearing these really fun pants with lots of fabric. Just rub your hands back and forth. So we're getting all those touch receptors sending messages to your brain. And there's no threat. You're not touching anything hot. You're just touching something. And your brain's going, okay, I don't know why, but it's fine. Okay? Deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Okay, now comes the fun part. So do it with me. If you could look at anything that would put an immediate smile on your face, what would that be? The ocean waves, stars, your lover, a pet, a grandchild. What would you love to look at right now? I'm going to go for sitting on a sunny beach in Hawaii, Kahala Beach. I know exactly where, with the pelicans flying over and the ocean waves coming in, right? So think about what would you love to look at. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to go there. I want you to visualize that. So I'm going for the sunny beach and the waves rolling in. Okay, deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay. What could you hear that would put an immediate smile on your face? Is it the laughter of children? Is it birds? Is it ocean waves? Is it the wind? Is it Kenny Loggins' Winnie the Pooh song, which happens to be one of my favorite? What is your favorite thing in the world to listen to? Close your eyes and listen to it. I'm going to go with Winnie the Pooh doesn't know what to do. That's my favorite song. Okay. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay. What could you smell that would put an immediate smile on your face? What is your favorite thing in the world to smell? Man, the ocean? I love the smell of coconut, but there's nothing better than hot baking cinnamon rolls. So what is your favorite thing in the world to smell? Immediate smile, right? Cinnamon rolls have never tasted better than during a pandemic, I'm going to say. Okay, close your eyes and be there. Smell it. God, I love cinnamon rolls. Okay, deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Okay, what could you taste that would put an immediate smile on your face? What is your favorite thing in the world to eat? I don't care if it's IC friendly or not. What is it? Coffee, chocolate, hot apple pie, hot cinnamon roll? Pick it. Close your eyes. There it is right there. And you're enjoying it. Oh, that hot, gooey cinnamon roll with frosting. Dang, it is so good. Deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Last but not least, what could you touch that would put an immediate smile on your face? Would it be rubbing the hair of a young grandchild or child? Would it be your lover? You always have to get your lover in there. Would it be having an animal, a cat or a dog on your lap? What's your favorite thing to touch? Now, for me, sitting in a recliner, cat on my lap, fire going, good book, win every time. Jill is in a very happy place when that happens. So let's go there. You're touching, you're petting that dog, you're petting that cat. You know what I mean. Deep breath in, deep breath out. How do you feel? Big giant smile, right? You got a big giant smile on your face, right? Why? Because we have just proven to your brain, we have just forced your brain back out of fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is now in total control, and this will last for hours. Hours. Works every time. But here's the rub. The challenge with like in my case, I'll just use my case. Listen, guys. My anxiety got real bad. There were moments when I did not want to leave my home, even as an adult, even after the guy was in jail. Anxiety is real. PTSD is real. And for those of us who have struggled with anxiety disorder, we are the no people. Hey, Jill, you want to go to a movie? No, I have to go to the bathroom. You want to go out to dinner? No, it'll give me a flare. Hey, you want to go travel? No, I don't want to go to travel. Why are we the no person? I don't want to be the no person. I want to be the yes person. Well, that just means you're guarding. That's your fight or flight. That's your brain trying to protect you. And how do I want to say this? I just did this with a patient 2 days ago. We had a great time. It was so fun. A guarding brain is a negative brain. it's assuming the worst because it's trying to save your life. It just thinks you're in danger. Hey, you want to go for a walk? No, he's out there. Hey, you want to go do this? No. Your brain's just trying to protect you. There's no cognition happening in here. It's just trying to protect you. And the ripple effect is that you get a lot of scary thoughts. There's a lot of negative thoughts going on. The longer you have it, the greater the negative thought. And I'm sorry I'm talking about this because we've just now lost the effect of the exercise we just did. But that's okay. There's a happy ending with this too. Okay. So the other thing we got to deal with is just the anxiety, the negative thoughts. I'm sick of negative thoughts. I'm a positive person. I can, I've done 100 lectures, guest lectures on IC. I asked almost every doctor, why does my brain go to the negative? I'm a happy, positive person. And they just say, it's just brain chemistry, hon. Your brain's just stuck in fight or flight. So we have got to stop the negative thoughts. And the way we do that is, and we've got to stop the adrenaline overload that the negative thoughts are happening. And so we have to learn new skills. So I'm going to teach you this skill too. So how did I get better? And Audrey says, me too. I'm sick of the negative thought. I know, it's freaking annoying. It's so annoying. I want to have positive. Look at my office. Come on. It's a happy place. I got love. I got faith. I got hope everywhere. I got all these birds flying right up here. You can't see. Like I live in a happy home. The drapes are open. So why are my thoughts negative? And that's just chemistry. It's just chemistry. So I used to have panic attacks going to the doctor because I used to have panic attacks walking out of my house. And one day I was just like, I'm done. Come on, I've got all these psychology degrees and I still have panic attacks. What gives? And I finally was just like, all right, I need help. And I found this amazing class taught at my local Kaiser hospital. And I signed up for it because I was just, listen, I just didn't want to deal with this. I needed to learn how to deal with this. And the class was amazing. It was taught by an orthopedic surgeon with anxiety disorder, a practicing orthopedic surgeon with anxiety disorder for his son who also had anxiety disorder. And the class was mind-blowing. So the first cool thing about the class is that when you're in the middle of this, you think everybody can see how messed you are up when they look in your face. You feel totally abnormal. And when you walk in that door and you see all these normal people who have anxiety, you go, oh, wait, oh, God, wait. I'm not abnormal at all. I'm a normal person that something happened to, right? It's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened to. We had the first winners of our California State Lottery was in our class because they developed anxiety after winning the lotto. There are people who are afraid to drive. People are afraid to walk into stores. It was just really cool. So it's just like, oh, this is so, okay, I get it. I'm not abnormal. Things can happen. And the second thing that the doctor said is he said, now listen, I'm not here to analyze what happened in your childhood. I'm not here to do any of that. I am here to get you out of fight or flight because you've been living there for a long, long time. And that's why you're so negative. And that's why you're so sensitive. And now if you had something really bad happen to you, I will get you care. I promise you I will. But what we're going to work on today is skills. I'm going to teach you a skill that will help you reduce the anxiety. And it's like, all right, I'm in. He goes, okay. So what you don't know about what's driving your anxiety is that you are in adrenaline overload. You had so many things happen to you and you have so many negative thoughts. Every time you have a negative thought, you trigger fight or flight. And the problem is that you don't just have one negative thought a day, you have 100. Man, you can't kid a kidder. I've been there. Like every thought is negative. Every thought is scary. Every time you have a thought, bam, jolt of adrenaline, bam, fight or flight. He said, you don't just have one jolt of adrenaline, you got hundreds of jolts of adrenaline. And it's all the circulating adrenaline that's giving you panic attacks. That's making you nauseous. It's making you dizzy. It's just you're overdosing on adrenaline right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to get out of it, adrenaline overdose. I'm like, okay, teach me. He said, it's all about, we have to get rid of the negative thoughts. So this is how we're going to do it. Whenever you have a negative thought, the first thing I want you to do is to visualize a stop sign. Just stop. Stop. And many of you already do that anyway. You go sick of it. You're just like, stop, right? So the first thing you do is visualize a stop sign. Then you take a nice, slow, deep breath in and out. And here's what's cool. That oxygen destroys the adrenaline from that negative thought. It's done. It's over. It's chemically neutral. It's gone. So you have a negative thought. It'll never work. Okay. Stop sign. Deep breath. And then the third step is you have to remind yourself, it's just a thought. It has no power. It's just a thought. So what I say to myself is, oh my God, Jill, how arrogant can you be to think that you can predict the future? You're not God. For all you know, tomorrow is going to be one of the best days of your life. It's a thought. Get rid of it, right? So stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. And he said, okay, so we have one goal for this week in this class. We're going to get you out of adrenaline overload. So I want you to do this. This is what the teacher was saying to us. As you walk, focus on your thoughts, pay attention. Every time you have a negative thought, stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I'm like, okay. I like chemistry. I'm a geek like that. I'll do it. Out of the room, had my first negative thought. It'll never work, Jill. What a stupid idea. Okay. I did it. Stop sign, deep breath. Minimize the thought. You know how arrogant can you be to think that you can tell right now it won't work. You haven't even done a thing, Jill. Come on, give it a shot. Right? Got it. Okay. So that day, I did it. I was shocked. I'd gotten so used to it because, again, this is trauma driven. So I've been doing this for decades. So I easily did it 100 times that first day. I was shocked at how many negative thoughts I was having. There's a lot of depression, a lot of self-hatred going on, a lot of very low self-esteem going on. What's wrong with you, Jill? Right? Okay. The next day, I did it about 50 times. I was still doing it. Third day, I did it about 20 times. 5 days later, once. And for the first time in decades, I had no adrenaline flowing through my body. And it was mind-blowing. I was so calm. I was so comfortable. I didn't have this negativity, all of this stress. It was gone. And he said, when we get back, he said, listen, just like you can be sensitive to chemicals on the outside, you can be sensitive to chemicals on the inside. And the hard part about having anxiety disorder is you just amp up the adrenaline over and over and over again. So we're just going to break you out of that. We're going to calm your entire system down by getting rid of the adrenaline. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I have not had a panic attack since I took that class 30 years ago. I've been through cancer. I've been through emergency surgery. I have not had a single panic attack. I am attentive now, and I'm comfortable now. Now, listen, I got to the point where I was doing that maybe once a month. And then COVID hit. And COVID is damn scary. And you try keeping two elderly parents alive during COVID. I got back to doing it every day. Because this has been a scary time the last couple of years. We've all been affected by this. We have all been affected by this. And so, but that's okay, because that's life. The thing is I don't let it drive me anymore. I have one negative thought. I know that, okay, I can live with one. 2 negative thoughts in a row. Nope. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. Man, I'm telling you, I refuse to allow my brain to go down that path. I nip that anxiety in the bud. Stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. And I just, all I can tell you is that it completely changed my life. Pain that is accompanied by anxiety will be intensified by your brain because your brain thinks your life is at stake. Pain that is accompanied by laughter will be minimized by the midbrain because you're laughing. Therefore, your life is not at stake. And this is why positivity is important. Embrace that positivity, embrace those affirmations. That's what I did. I took the class, I practiced my stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought, and I started doing affirmations. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Pick your faith. It doesn't matter what faith you use. Every day, in every way, my life is getting better and better. Be bold and mighty force yourself. Pick your affirmation. Doesn't have to be religious. Whatever resonates with you. And say it over and over and over again. Put them on Post-its. Put them around your room. Put them on the bathroom window. I can do this. I will do this. I am a good person. No shame, no blame. Give your body and your brain a roadmap on where you want to be. Don't live in the past, live in the future in a way. Think about, another thing that really helped me get out of where I was in my late 20s and my early 30s was a book that I was reading. And it basically said, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered? And they had us write it down. And it's like, well, I want to be remembered. I don't want to be remembered as a sick person in the family. I don't want to be remembered as a person who pulled everybody down. I don't want to be remembered as the embarrassment or whatever. I want to be remembered as a person who stopped to help the dog that got hit by a car. I want to be the person who's remembered for trying to help people. Helping, if you help one person, at least one person a day, that is a good day. Proud of you. I want to be remembered as that loving patient. I want to be remembered as that person that people gravitate to. I want to be remembered for laughter. I want to be remembered for love. I want to be remembered as a kind woman. That's how I want to be remembered. So I'm writing this all down in this exercise in this book. And I'm just like sobbing, right? Oh, I'll never be remembered this way, And then then the next chapter was like, okay, how do you make that happen? And they said, well, you just gave yourself your roadmap because you just wrote it down. Now do it. Be kind. Stop for the dog that got hit by the car or the cat, like I did on Christmas Eve a couple years ago. Help one person a day. Pick somebody. Get out of your brain. Go out and help somebody else. It was just, don't let anybody else's preconceived views of you limit what you can do. Be bold. Be bold, and mighty forces shall come to thy aid. If you lose a job because of IC, don't look at that as a failure. Look at that as an opportunity to find a better job that will make you more fulfilled. Yeah, it sucks. I got fired because of my IC. I sued them for 5 years. Great things await you. Great things await all of us. And I believe in you. I believe in me. I believe in you. We deserve the best out of life. And yeah, you know what? Shit happened. Bad shit happened. But it's not going to define me. It's not going to define you. There are, I think for me, I think now I've really gotten to the point where it's like I realize how sad that life must have been of the guy who tried to get me and who instead raped and murdered my neighbor. Fetal alcohol syndrome was probably what that was. So anyway, we're all processing. One of the big IC researchers right now is a very nice man that this happened. He had something similar happen to him. He's got incredible degrees from like Harvard or Yale, and just an amazing scientist, right? And then when he was in post-grad school, he was riding a bicycle into work. And one day he started experiencing pelvic pain and prostate pain. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then he started having migraines. He started having this entire progression that I went through. And he didn't have, so his injury, again, because it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. He sustained a really severe pelvic injury from riding the bike. Really substantive damage to a nerve down there. And it just began this cascade of pain that ended up spreading throughout his entire body. But he also happened to be an award-winning scientist who actually kind of had a clue what was going on, and he was understanding that his nervous system was injured, and then he developed some regional pain sensitivity, and then he developed some systemic pain sensitivity, et cetera, et cetera. And he is now using that insight and is exploring new ways of calming the brain down in that way. That central sensitization that's happening. And he spoke at the conference, and it's so great to look in the eyes of somebody who's younger than me, who is also an academic like I am. He's a much better academic than I am, and has been through the exact same thing. We had different causes, but the exact same whole issue. And I'm going to be doing a big article on that, big interview with him, and you guys will have a chance to meet him and some of the research that he's doing. It's really very, very exciting. And we're just getting so much closer to calming everything down and taking all the shame away and all the blame away and all that sort of stuff, and giving you really concrete tools that will calm everything down. So again, that's IC subtype 5, chronic overlapping pain conditions. So for those of you who have just joined again on Instagram, because we got a lot of people coming in on Instagram, I'm Jill. I'm the National IC Support Group Leader. There's patient diversity here. We're not all the same. One treatment fits all approach does not work. Bladder therapies don't work for the great majority of patients out there. Why? Because for many of us, it's not coming from the bladder. And here's the other thing we know: $100 million of IC research failed. Why? Because you can't put apples, oranges, and bananas in the same study and expect them to behave the same way. They will not behave in the same way. We have diversity in the IC patient population. For some of you, IC began in childhood. For others, IC began after menopause. Are you biologically the same? No, you're not. For some of you, IC began after chemotherapy because the chemicals of the chemo killed your bladder, or you drank too much diet soda. For others, IC began because you got older and you're in estrogen atrophy. Are you biologically same? No, you're not. And we really see the diversity when we look inside the bladder, because some of you have big bloody wounds on your bladder called Hunner's ulcers. Well, for others, you have a perfectly normal bladder. I got a baby bladder. That's what my doctor said. I have a beautiful pink bladder. There's nothing wrong with my bladder. So why have I had pain for 30, off and on for 30, 40 years? Because it's driven by my nerves and my muscles instead. So we now do subtyping. It's called precision medicine. We're no longer slapping Elmeron on everybody and telling everybody to do the diet. We already know that doesn't work. Instead, we're trying to understand the cause so that we can give you the medications that will match your unique condition. And we do that through phenotyping or subtyping. So I use a system created by Dr. Christopher Payne. He focuses on 5 core variants. Hunner's lesions, that's one clear variant. That's a small subtype, maybe 5% of you, 10% at the most. So these are the patients who have big bloody wounds. We now know that Hunner's lesions are connected to viral infections. So no wonder they didn't respond to Elmeron, because for some of you, you have a virus, polyomavirus in your bladder wall, or you could have COVID in your bladder wall. Or you could have something twisting a nerve that's causing a nerve to be super inflamed. That can also cause a lesion. Okay, so you need your own research and you need your own therapies. IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven. These are patients who have a clear bladder wall issue. Now the question is why? So these are the chemotherapy patients, because the bladder, like any part of the body, can be injured. Usually it's injured through a chemical exposure. So these are the chemo patients. These are the massive coffee drinkers, energy drinkers, diet soda, ketamine. They're going to damage the bladder wall. The bladder wall was not designed for the high levels of acid we see today in today's modern diet. It's just not. You might be able to get away with a little bit, but you spend 10 years drinking Diet Coke and your bladder's going to be compromised. Our other mini variant in this group is estrogen atrophy. If your symptoms began after you started birth control, if you've been on Lupron to stop your periods, if you've had a hysterectomy, or if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, we have to consider the quality and health of your skin. Because if your vulva is dry and your vagina is dry, then so is your urethra and so is your bladder, and your bladder is going to react to food. That's not a disease. There's no incurable bladder disease happening with these patients. This is simple estrogen atrophy. That's all it is. So our therapeutic priority for you is estrogen. We give the skin estrogen, it produces mucus, and it can defend itself now. And of course, there's other things we would do too. Okay. Our third subtype is pelvic floor driven. These are the patients whose symptoms began after a trauma, like having a baby where you got torn, or you fell on your tailbone, or you were a cheerleader for 10 years, or you were a dancer, or you were a football player, or you were a bike rider, an Ironman athlete. Now, of course, you have no clue you have a muscle injury. Your first symptom is frequency urgency. You think UTI. You go to the doctor. Hey, I'll give you antibiotics. Not a problem. Don't work. You go back. Okay, let's do long-term antibiotics. Doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. This is what happened. They don't work. You go back to the doctor. The doctor goes, okay, let's do some prostate meds. Let's do some overactive bladder meds, ditropan, Detrol, Flomath. You do those. They don't really work. You're still flaring. You go back to the doctor and they eventually get the, oh man, I hate to break it to you. I think you have this incurable bladder disease called interstitial cystitis. Here's Elmeron, here's a diet. I'll see you in 6 months. And you want to get better, so you do it. You do it. You go home and you follow that diet. And you get rid of the things that you love. And you take the Elmeron and whatever else they give you for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Are you better? No. Many of you are still flaring. Why? Because none of those fix the problem. Because the problem is tight muscles restricting blood supply. You are in ischemia. And that's the big point at the National Institutes of Health IC meeting this week on last Monday and Tuesday. Our therapeutic priority for you is to restore blood supply. You will never get better on bladder treatments. And ironically, of all the major research studies done by our own National Institutes of Health, hundreds of millions of dollars, every single study failed, except one. The pelvic floor physical therapy study proved that pelvic floor therapy works in reducing the symptoms of IC. And when that study came out, and again in 2008, I think, or 2011, either or, everybody went, uh-oh, maybe this isn't an incurable bladder disease. Maybe this is a muscle problem for some of us. It was a muscle problem for me. And pelvic floor physical therapy has healed me. I didn't say cure because I don't look at this as a disease. You don't cure an injury, you heal an injury. That's our biggest subtype, pelvic floor driven. 84% of patients have tight pelvic floor muscles. Now we got to figure out why. Could you have a bad hip, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. Our fourth subtype is pudendal neuralgia. This is the one that AUA left out. That NIH left out of their meeting. These are the patients who have positional symptoms. You're fine when you stand, but when you sit down, it hurts. Or when you bend over, it hurts. Or you have pins and needles, areas of numbness. Or you have persistent genital arousal disorder. Or you have sciatica. That means that we have a nerve that's being compromised by a body position, by muscle. So our therapeutic priority for this group of patients is to figure out which nerve is compromised. They usually do that with a nerve block. And then at the same time, we want to try to identify what's causing the compromise, which is usually a tight pelvic floor muscle. And then we have to do the physical therapy to release the pelvic floor. And we've got to do some therapies that will calm nerves down because your nerves are massively irritated right now. They might give you lidocaine, a gel to use on your skin. They might give you Neurontin. They might give you PEA. Obviously, in this group of patients, bladder therapies are pointless. They're pointless. And last but not least, our last subtype is chronic overlapping pain condition, central sensitization. If you have sensitive skin, if you have a wicked sense of smell, if you have two pain conditions, you have anxiety, this is your subtype. This is also my subtype. This means that you have an injured central nervous system. So now what we have to do is we've got to try to calm your nervous system down. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. The central nervous system is injured by physical injury or abuse or bullying. And I've already talked about that extensively today, and my voice is starting to give out. So precision medicine, when you use subtyping, you will find the right treatment for you. And that's what our National Institutes of Health said on Monday and Tuesday at the big IC meeting, precision medicine. So this is a very, very exciting time for the IC world because we are acknowledging our failures. And we are all now agreeing, yes, it's the diversity that matters. And we're not going to have you waste money. Now, the one thing I did there is I advocated for you. I was very blunt. I said, now listen, to the NIH guys and to the international doctors, I said, your studies have, for the most part, been a disappointment for patients because you picked subjects we already knew the answer to. And if you had come to us, we would have told you that that was not going to be meaningful. The Elmeron study, okay? There was an Elmeron-Eleville study. And we were just like, guys, come on. We already know that it doesn't work for the great majority of patients out there. Why are we putting $100 million or however much they put in it, 50 million, 20 million? Why are we studying this again? Don't study this again. We need new therapeutics. And one of the points that I made to them is that NIH studies do not give us new therapies. It just tests therapies that other people have already tried, people are trying to develop. We have to nurture the new innovators. We have to nurture the new innovators. So who are the new innovators? Well, it's the scientists working for pharmaceutical companies who are really trying to create new treatments. That was my first degree in drug development, or my second degree, trying to create new therapeutics. And we have to help them more. So anyway, it's a very cool time. I'm really happy. I'm really happy about what I'm hearing, and I'm really happy for you. I think it's going to help you. It's going to help me. It's kind of overwhelming, actually. My brain's been spinning for a couple of months. It's been a weird, this has been a very weird, stressful year. And I have just been trying to comprehend it all. And it's coming in. My brain is making more sense of it, which is a good thing. All right. Well, listen, I have been talking for 3 hours and 30 minutes now. So let me just see if there are any last questions, any more questions. Please, 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 guys. And for Instagram, you guys may not know this. I also care for my very elderly parents. My dad is going to be 100 years old in 2 weeks. And I am hoping that we can get him a lot of birthday cards. He's going to be 100 years old. And so I'm asking ICers, and he's the last of his family. So it's not like there's a lot of people here around for him now. And honestly, the IC network would not be here if he hadn't been here, because back when I couldn't care for myself, he cared for me, and my mother cared for me. When I couldn't drive to the ER, he drove me to the ER. When I couldn't drive to doctor's appointments, he drove me to doctor's appointment. So I really want to try to do a nice thing for him. I've only gotten one card. I haven't gotten any cards other than one. So if you send me an email, icnetwork@mac.com, I'll send you the address. I would just love to try to give him more cards. It's very hard to figure out a way to celebrate a 100-year-old birthday in the middle of COVID, and he's unvaxxed, and it's just, I'm struggling. Eric says, does anybody develop flares after Omicron? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's COVID cystitis. Well documented. We're part of the research team that's doing that. So COVID cystitis is, we believe, an autoimmune response, or no, a cytokine storm response. So the challenge with COVID is it triggers this overwhelming cytokine storm throughout the human body. COVID is not a respiratory virus. Don't let anybody tell you that it is. COVID attacks blood vessels. That's why so many people have gotten blood clots. We don't see blood clots with the flu. We see massive blood clotting in some patients with COVID, especially early COVID. And so it's that cytokine storm, that massive inflammatory response that's damaging the lungs and damaging different parts of the body. So it's also damaging the bladder. We're seeing that cytokine storm and the cytokine storm markers in urine. So we're seeing it in the bladder. It was one of the early things that researchers in Germany found in the first or second month of COVID 3 years ago. The other thing we know is that the COVID virus can actually penetrate and live in the bladder in some patients. Generally, those are the patients who have very, very severe disease and are hospitalized. Otherwise, it's just a presumed cytokine storm. It's a flare that's going to last for a few months. And it's a challenging flare. So you're going to have to get right back. Here, Marcia says, my IC pain has been so much worse since I had COVID. Yes. Yeah, that's routine. That's absolutely routine. So you got to go back to protecting your bladder. Even if you're pelvic floor driven, you got to do everything you can to protect your bladder. This means no coffee, nothing acidic, no cranberry, no tomato, no citrus. Don't put anything irritating in your bladder. Don't put anything that will irritate your nerves also. So no caffeine. I would be doing chamomile herbal tea, because the effects of chamomile herbal tea are just incredible. Chamomile is very soothing to tissue and to the immune system. I think anything that you can do that will calm nerves down is good. So something like Piora, palmitoyl ethanolamide, would be ideal, because it will just kind of keep the nerves stable, calmer and stable. Remember, I'm IC subtype 5, central sensitization, and pelvic floor driven. This is what I take. I don't take anything for my bladder because my bladder's fine, but this calms my nerves down a lot. It's called Piora, also known as palmitoyl ethanolamide. We had a first IC study with this in 2019, which showed that 87% of IC patients using PEA reported a significant reduction in their pain by month 3. You can get this in the IC Network store. This is the American version of the European formula that was used in the IC study. Lisa, is my dad a veteran? You better believe it. He was in World War II. Aviation ordnance. He loaded bombs on boats and onto planes, mostly onto planes. Down in San Diego. It was all over. Everybody in his family were vets. He had 6 brothers and sisters. They were all in the Navy and the Army. My grandfather was an officer. in the Navy during the war. I'm a proud Navy daughter. My brother is a nuke on a submarine. We have a lot of pilots, both grandfathers. My mom's father was a naval aviator in World War II, also flew the Secretary of the Navy around. So anyway, getting back to the COVID flare, you're gonna have to write it out. Calming, soothing. It's a wicked flare. But 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, hopefully things will calm down. It's a beast. We're doing research on that right now. I have a survey in the IC Network Survey Center. For anybody who's had COVID, if you've had flares, come tell us about it and take our survey. And I think we have a new paper on it too. I swear, don't we have a new? I swear I just saw a new paper on this, like in the last 2 weeks. Here, wait, hold on. I don't know how my brain remembers these titles. It does. I never remember names, guys. I remember numbers. I mean, I don't remember people's names, even after 10 years. But I can remember numbers all the time. It's so weird. And I can remember article titles. Incidence of new or worsening overactive bladder among patients with prior COVID, a cohort study. Here, this is cool. This is done by Ken Peters and Michael Chancellor at Beaumont Health in Michigan, one of our top IC research centers. Let's see what they say. "27% and 38% of those with PCR positivity for COVID had an increase in their urinary symptoms." Not really helpful. Well, anyway, strong association, so you're not alone. Marcia says, "My AC pain is so much worse since I had COVID. I took one a couple hours ago, and it absolutely did calm my physical nerves in my feet. Chronic regional pain syndrome." Oh, the PEA? Marcia, you using PEA? I love it. Lisa says, "Will the military do something on his birthday? A local group?" I have not had time to contact them. Oh, Marcia, I'm so glad that this is working. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to flip you off, guys. I'm so glad that Pure is working. It works for me too. All my skin sensitivity is gone with PEA. Yes. If you pop me an email, my email is icnetwork@mac.com. icnetwork@mac.com. Yeah, so pop me an email and I'll email you back the address. Thank you for thinking about sending a card. Christine, thank you. Christine wrote, "You were so kind to me when I called you after I had spine surgery. You explained to me the different types of IC. Would like to pay for it. Thank you, honey. Thank you very, very much." Audrey says, "Can I recommend a bread?" Yes, Ezekiel bread. Ezekiel bread. That's made by a company called Food for Life. You get it in the frozen section. Perfect for somebody who's sensitive and has IBS because it's not made with processed flour. It's made with sprouts. And so you don't have the concentration of the irritants that making flour causes. And so it's just like real food. I've been eating it for years. Makes the best French toast, the best grilled cheese sandwiches. You cannot go wrong with Ezekiel bread. Marcia says that's what I eat. Yeah. I gotta say, I do, even though I can't eat gluten, I get very bloated when I've eaten gluten this week because I was reacting to the COVID booster and I didn't feel good. And it's amazing how puffy you get when you eat gluten. And yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. So I'm really trying. I'm going much more. I'm gluten-free when possible, organic when possible, and I'm cutting way back on my animal proteins. Although I am eating eggs, and I'll only eat red meat like once a week instead of 3 or 4 times a week right now. Just trying to. 62 years old. The body's starting to get a little challenging. My blood pressure has been going up and down and up and down. I got to work on that. No salt, no alcohol. Just trying to take control. Sue says, I keep your bread in the freezer. I keep it in the freezer until I use it. Then it'll last about a week. Sue says, we need more pelvic floor therapists that are trained properly. I live in a relatively big city and could only find one. Sue, if you're still here, Sue, what city do you live in? Or give me a zip code. I have a really good database now, and it's just growing like a beast. I mean, the IC Network Find a Doctor database is really good, but pelvicrehab.com is phenomenal for finding properly trained physical therapists. If you go to a physical therapist who tells you to do Kegels, they are not trained. You never do Kegels when you've got pelvic pain. It will only make it worse. So Sue, can you give me a zip code if you're still there? If you're not, you guys, Grand Rapids. Okay, hold on. Let's see what pelvic rehab has for them. Oh, girl, this is a ton. There are 4. There are 4 certified pelvic floor physical therapists in Grand Rapids. And then there's a bunch more that are in the process of being certified. So go to pelvicrehab.com. So here, let's see. I can just throw out some names. Catherine Klein. She is at Purple Mountain Physical Therapy in Grand Rapids. She's certified. Sierra Ward. She is at Spectrum Health. And then there's another one right there. Who's that? Oh, wait, that's her. Who is this? Oh, no, they just have her listed twice. And then there's another one up in Belmont, just to the north. Karen Munger. She's certified. Girl, you got options. You got a lot of options there. Yes, you've seen 3 of them, and the only one I liked was this one who seemed to have the most info. Did you see any of the ones that I mentioned? So pelvicrehab.com. Audrey says, can you list your days and times you come on? Thank you so much. I've been following you for years. I live in 95050. Sure. I usually do it on Sundays, and I try to do a drop-in meeting on Facebook, and I need to start doing drop-in meetings on Instagram. Hi, Tiffy. So here, let me search for you now. So you're 95050. Okay, hold on. Santa Clara, California. Ooh. 1. All right. There's one right by, just south of the airport, hon. Here, hold on. Dr. Lee, Lee. And she is at Pelvic Guru. Pelvic Guru. So again, pelvicrehab.com. You can search in there. You get all their contact info. And you've got a couple more. You've got quite a few more to the west and up the peninsula, and even to the east in Evergreen. Also, too, you have Pelvic Health and Rehab. They have an office on the peninsula. They're one of the best firms in the nation. Thank you, Rhonda. Okay, hold on. Thank you for the stars, Jennifer. All right, guys. Well, listen, my voice is starting to give out. I always hate to stop these when there are people watching. So let me do a last call for questions. Any more questions? Any more questions? Otherwise, if you find these meetings helpful, please come on back to the IC Network, icnetwork.org, and sign up to receive our newsletter. It's free. I'll be sending out a newsletter again that goes to over 30,000 patients. Hopefully I'll have one out this week. And then if you want to get our wonderful patient magazine, it's called the IC Optimist, you can become a member on the IC Network for $25 a year. Or you can think about buying something in our store like Peora or Preleave or Bladder Rest, any of those two. And that keeps these alive and kicking. Because believe me, we have bills. Not the least of which are internet bills. Okay, last call for questions. Times. I usually try to start between 12:30 and 1 on Pacific time. But sometimes I run a little bit late because I'm caring for my parents. Like I started 10 minutes late today because my parents needed me. And if it's crazy and things are happening, sometimes I can't do it. I do my best. So, all right, guys, be well. You know what? I'm going to hang out on Instagram a bit. I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube. All right, my friends. I hope you are well. Have a wonderful week. All right, you